Hey, Julie, are we the only two here? This is for Ignite, right?
I know it is. I was thinking when I came on, I was the only person here.
I know. Okay, I'm going to find out what's going on. I'll be right back.
Okay. Could you put up the material to print for today? Do you have
Yeah.
the link? Okay. I'll be doing that while you're doing that.
Okay, let me see what I can find here.
Wow,
I'm
it's a party of two.
I'm running late. I was expecting a room full though. They'll get here.
8:56. I'm just saying.
I know. I know.
No pressure. I'm just saying.
Right?
Is it the holiday weekend? Maybe people left.
I hope not.
I'm all set. Thanks.
Okay, there's that.
Oh, there's someone else. Oh, we're up to 3.
Try that link I just sent you, Julie, for materials.
All righty. Looks good to me. See if I can get it printed up.
What's up, Dr. Kenyon? How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Very good.
Guess we have some sleepy people, so we'll just wait a few. I hopped on at like 8:56.
Yeah, I pulled up. I'm like, there's no line at the door. This is not good. Not a good start.
That's all right. We'll give them a chance to.
And we're giving away a Buick today. That's what's so disappointing. I thought there'd be more people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right, now they're starting to pour in.
Okay.
They heard us see free car. They got excited.
Can you make me co-host?
I just got here as a guest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Stand by.
Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
There,
How are
she
you
signed.
today?
She signed in as host. Perfect. Okay.
I have the power.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to make you a co-host.
Thank you, ma'am.
I need a valet key like your parents let you take for the weekend. Puts the governor on the engine so you can't
I will
speed.
also make you a co-host,
You're allowed
Mr.
to park it and
Lindsay.
open the trunk.
And do we have an MCTT with us today? Do we know?
I do not know.
All right.
A mildly challenged tech trainer, that would be me. I don't know. I mean, I guess yeah. Unless Robert's showing up, I don't think we have anybody on the books.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
We might.
So I'm going to drop the materials in the chat, and then actually, Tim, I have to jump for like a half an hour at 10 for another meeting, and then I'll come back. So I'll make you the host, so I don't close the whole meeting like I did last time.
That's fun. We love that. It's like the worst surprise party ever.
Bye. Yeah. All right. So I'll start doing the materials.
Susan Kenyon was about to get to the contract.
Whoops.
And it just froze. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, we're doing
Yeah.
something.
You know, I like to keep it professional at all times. It's a very well-oiled machine we have going here.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. My name's Tim Lindsay. Aaron and I are productivity coaches at 463. We are, nobody calls us Greater Portsmouth, but I want to start the trend because there's Greater Hartford and Greater Portland. And then when we say Portsmouth, they think we're talking about Virginia. We're not. We're the cool kids. So Portsmouth, New Hampshire, we've got agents licensed out of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. We've got brick and mortar in New Hampshire and Maine. Our agents would love your referrals. And one of our great agents, phenomenal instructor, that you are trapped with us here today. The dulcet tones of Susan Kenyon is going to take you through all of the material today, which is phenomenal. So if you have any questions, please fire them off into the chat. And Susan, I guess you can get started.
Okay. Awesome. Well, if you guys are here for Ignite Contract to Close, you're in the right place. Congratulations. And so my name is Susan Kenyon. As Tim said, I'm up here in Portsmouth in 463 with Tim and Aaron. And I come from the perspective of production. I am in production. So everything that I really am doing, I am coming from that place of wanting to get more business. So congratulations, you have made it to contract to close, and it's a long haul for Ignite. So great job sticking with it. During the day today, and I will do my very best to get us out of here on time at 12. Please keep your videos on. I love to see your faces because I'm an in-person person usually, so I do miss seeing everybody. And ask questions and participate and interrupt me whenever you want. I appreciate anybody's thoughts or experiences or questions or something that if you have a question, somebody else is probably having that question and just not asking it. So feel free to jump right in at any point. If you're more comfortable to raise your hand first, you can do that. I'll do my very best to look for raised hands or just unmute yourself and jump right in.
I was just going to say, Susan, tell them to keep their cameras on unless they're eating grape nuts. It creates a terrible visual. Yeah. Yeah. The hair of the dog that bit me when this all started. We have an agent way up north and she was dieseling a bowl of grape nuts, and I'll never be the same. Yeah. So
gosh,
if you're having a chew fest, we'll invite you to drop the veil and shut your camera off. But then please rejoin us after you put the spinach out of your teeth. Awesome.
Absolutely. And I did not set my timer on my phone today for a break. So I will be looking for
yeah, we'll take care of you. Don't worry.
Fire off a flare. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. So we will take a break as well. So feel free to jump right in. But this is like my favorite module in all of Spark and Elementals because I love contracts to start with, and I love contract to close. I'm super passionate about it. I really feel like it's a great opportunity for you to step up service and really it's the end of a deal, but it's the beginning of new business, which we're going to talk about today in these next few hours. So congratulations, you're under contract, super exciting. I'm going to remember to advance slides too. There we go. And so today, you know, we've seen this slide really every single session, but it's such a phenomenal slide. And I really have started even using this in my own thought process and my own planning when I'm looking at my day and my week and what we're doing in my office, because you really have, you know, opportunities to grow your business and run your business. And we've talked a lot about growing your business during Ignite with lead generating for buyers and sellers, and making seller presentations, making buyer presentations, and getting those agency agreements signed, and previewing real estate, all super important. If we don't effectively grow our business, then we don't ever have the opportunity or the privilege to jump over to running our business. And running the businesses can be a lot of fun and very time consuming. And what I love about Ignite is this material comes from what successful agents have done. And if they have done it and they're saying, you need to do this every day, then that's what we do. We do this every day. So every single day we grow our business. And when we have contracts and we get under contract and we're in that contract to close period, then we're really into running our business. But we never forget about the growing our business, because as soon as that contract's closed, you don't want to have like nothing in your pipeline. So when we're running our business, we're talking about marketing our seller listing. So we have our agency agreement signed, and now we have to market that. And we have a buyer agency signed. So we have to, you know, show our buyers houses and take them shopping. And today we're going to really get into, the negotiating contracts, the transaction management to closing is really our piece. The experience that we give our clients, our co-brokes clients, that's all part of this transaction to management piece. And vendor management. We have a lot of vendors that still get brought into the contract to close piece of this running our business. So we're going to talk about that, our lenders, our title people, our appraisers, our inspectors, all those things that happen when we're under contract. And keeping those relationships solid and smooth will help you get to the table, because a lot can happen and there's a lot of risks involved where we can have some pitfalls in the contract to close process. So it's our responsibility to minimize those risks and to make it as great of an experience as possible. There's setting goals. And there's also, that compliance risk management piece, which we'll talk some more about as we go through these slides. And then, of course, running your business is attending training and getting coaching, which you're doing right now. So great job in doing that. And, managing money. Did you guys attend the finance piece of Ignite? Yeah, pretty good
did that
stuff.
yesterday. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. It's important. We work hard. And if we have no money at the end of it, that stinks. We can't just spend all of the money once we have a commission check. There's expenses that have to happen. And our families need us to actually have money to put in the personal checking account at the end of our transactions or the end of our month or quarter, however you're doing that.
If you work really hard and there's no money, Susan, there's a word for that. It's called a hobby.
True.
Yeah.
True. It's not good to spend all your time doing this and just have it as being a hobby. And is anybody else here money motivated? I am. I am.
Of course. What, we're gonna work for nothing?
Right. Absolutely. So we have to do training and manage our money so that we can have some fun for all of our efforts. But contract to close is like, man, you have worked so hard to get to contract to close with working with sellers or working with buyers. Hey, working with buyers right now, we're working really hard with buyers right now. I know I am. I'm going like 2 hours north today with a buyer. Normally, I probably would have passed that buyer on to somebody. But I'll drive the 2 hours right now just to try to get him under contract, because it's so hard to be a buyer's agent. So we're working really hard to get to contract to close. We need to make it an awesome experience. And I attended a training for, was it Monica Reynolds training? So if you see the Monica Reynolds, I don't know if they're still calling it the Perfect Real Estate Assistant class. They might be calling it something different now, I don't know. But when I first got my license, I took that class so I could learn as much as I could. Phenomenal class, really breaks it down, the business down into some significant pieces. But when she talked about contract to close, she references it as the dessert. And I have never, ever forgotten that. Oh. And right, Tim hears me say this every time I teach this class. But it's so true. Contract to close is the dessert, you know? And the way that she explained it to me was, you work so hard to get to contract to close. And it's like having a really important occasion that you want to celebrate. So you're going to go out to dinner to celebrate. You're going to put on your best clothes. You might be going to the most fancy restaurant that your area has. You're going to go with your most favorite person. You go there, the valet parking is phenomenal, is nice. The service when they greet you at the door is great. The waiter or waitress gives you excellent service. They're there every time you need a new drink, and the food is phenomenal. Just the presentation, the taste, the timing, everything about the food is wonderful. You're having an awesome time. And then you get to dessert, and they wheel out this great dessert cart. And there's all these elegant, beautiful desserts, and you pick your dessert and you're really looking forward to it. And they bring it out and they put the plate down in front of you after you've had a fantastic night, and there's a fly on the plate. Now, when you go out the next day with your friends and they're like, how was your celebration dinner? You're like, yeah, it was great, but there was a fly in my dessert. So if you don't nail contract to close, you are the fly in the dessert. You could have worked so hard to lead generate and do everything on the grow your side of this slide, making your presentations, getting your agency agreement signed, previewing real estate. Like, that's a ton of work, just that. Then you get the agency agreement signed and you get under contract. And we're going to talk about all the work that gets put into contract to close. But if you don't make that a fantastic experience for your client, you're the fly in the plate. That's what they're going to mostly remember. So after they close on either selling or buying their home, and they go out to dinner with their friends and they say, hey, how's your new home? How was your experience with Susan Kenyon? I don't want to be the fly. I want it to be fantastic. I don't want them to say, you know, it was really great, but man, that closing was terrible. Because that's the last thing that they remember. So we're going to talk about how to make this a really great experience for your client and what that can do for your business today. And really, it's all about communication and relationships. So here we go. Today, we are going to talk about best practices. We're going to build a buyer timeline and a seller timeline, best practices for managing the deal. We're going to talk about command transaction management. You know, we have to have some great documentation. We have to really manage this process for everybody involved. We're going to recap and talk about our success lists and our daily success habits. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is building a buyer timeline. So really, contract to close has, you know, the two perspectives. We're going to talk about if your contract to close with a buyer or if your contract to close with the seller. And, you know, during this whole time, I like to look at contract to close like I'm driving the bus in both directions. I'm really managing both sides, regardless of what client I have, whether I have the seller client or whether I have the buyer client. When I make sure that everything is going smoothly on both sides, I create the best possible experience for my client. And when we're going through this, it's important to remember that it doesn't always matter whose job it is to get something done. What's important is that it gets done and it gets done timely and correctly. So if that means we have to jump in and do something on the other side of the transaction, then we just do that. So from the buyer's perspective, you know, they're excited and we need to help keep them on task because they don't know this process all they know is that, yoo-hoo, we've seen 25 houses, we've written a gazillion offers, we're finally accepted. They're not going to remember everything in the contract. So we have to keep them, we have to keep those dates. We have to keep them on task. We have to keep them focused. And we have to make that as easy as possible. So I like knock over one domino at a time so I'm not overwhelming them. We need to remind them to get things done. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have an executed contract. And by an executed contract, we're making sure after all of the negotiating back and forth and all the, signed documents back and forth, that we have an executed contract that's filled out correctly, and that everybody involved has a copy of that contract. And that's where we start. And then we start with building a timeline with working with the lender. So for a buyer, and being a buyer's agent, this is one of the most significant relationships that you're going to have during the contract to close process. And we have to remember that our buyers don't understand why the lender's going to need as much paperwork as they're going to be asking for. And it's going to be a lot. It's a lot of paperwork. So we need to help our buyers understand that. We need to be in communication with the lender. So hopefully you have been in communication with your buyer's lender long before you have an executed contract. I know we've talked about that during Ignite and how important that is. And we give that lender a copy of the contract, and then we remind our buyers, okay, your lender is going to be asking you, I'm going to give the lender your contract. They're going to be asking you for a lot of paperwork. And what's important is that you get them everything as quickly as you possibly can. And at first, it's going to be a lot of paperwork. And what's going to happen is they're going to ask you for your bank statements, your tax returns, your paycheck stubs, and a slew of other things. When they ask you for that big list of documents, that buyer needs to get everything to them, because what they're doing is they're collecting them and they're putting them in a pile. And they're not going to pass that into underwriting until all of the documents are in there. And what our buyers are thinking is, well, I gave them the bank statements, they can start with that. Okay, now they have my tax returns, they can start with that. That's not really the way the process works. So we have to help them with that. And one way that we can do that is to let them know, look, at every day that you delay in getting the documents to your lender can be a day that we now have to extend your closing date. And that resonates with them because they don't want to extend their closing date. The seller might not be able to even offer to extend a closing date, but delays in paperwork equal delays in closing, period. That's just the way it works. Have you guys, does anybody here, do you have a relationship with a lender, or are you looking for a lender to build a relationship with? How's that going?
Yeah, I just reached out to someone, just going through some old business cards, and I looked at it, and I looked at my phone, and I had this person in my phone, and I didn't know who it was. Come to find out, it's my girlfriend's colleague of my girlfriend's wives, who's a loan officer. So I reached out to her the other day and talked for about half an hour, and she sent me some title attorneys that she deals with. So I asked her some questions about, financing. So it was a good start. I'm probably going to be able to use her in the future for sure. Awesome.
Good for you. Good for you.
I've had some really good luck with lenders. Luckily my mom actually runs St. Mary's Bank in Manchester. So she's been doing it for years. So luckily I have that support of, she knows different people, but I like to make contacts. Like I found on social media, actually a lot of people reached out to me as soon as friends that are lenders, as soon as they found like that I was a realtor, which I really like, because in my mind that shows them initiative. They want to work with me and collaborate. And I love to pick people that are experienced, but are also a little new like myself, because I find like they're so eager to help me with referrals and they're so eager for the business that I've found that they've worked really hard to want to have my business, basically because they're new like me, just starting out.
Yep. Fantastic. Good.
Susan, shameless plug for everyone's in-house lender, just to be within culture. your in-house lender at your market center is most likely renting space from your market center. So every dollar they spend on rent in your market center, and if they are, and I'll give our 463 a shameless plug. His name is Brad Kelly. And the amount of educational initiatives that he supports, he does every one of our All Partners meetings when we get back together again across the street over at the Atlantic Grill. Try the veal. It's fantastic. And he's awesome, right? So if I can bring him a deal, and again, your in-house lender may not be able to support every product under the sun. It's getting to know them and knowing that you know what products they do and don't support. So you can always, with integrity, say to your buyer that has no local relationship, because they're going to come at you guys again and again and again that I got a wicked good account at Bank of America. Well, I'm going to be real polite here and I'll let you investigate what national banks are like. You know, it's not a great experience. Nathan Dickey, our regional director, obviously our OP here, would invite you probably in a different choice of words. You want to pick a lender you can drive down the street and kick in the face, right? You want to be able to go find them. And obviously for us at 463, Brad's right down the hall. He's a phenomenal guy, and he doesn't do every financial product under the sun. Guess what? He's got a guy who does, right? So create those relationships. So you have your person that can do jumbo conforming, your person that does investment portfolios, and your person. I think one of the things he can't do is I'm going to get it wrong, a mobile in a park. I think that's one of the very few things Brad can't do. Yeah. But when I'm supporting him, who's supporting our market center, every bill that he pays or takes off the table for us adds into profit share. Yep. So they're really hard at work for us. So please explore your relationship at the local level at your market center. It behooves everyone at our company. Okay.
Absolutely. And you know, the thing about, you really do want to have a local lender because it makes the transaction, the contract to close so much better. And you need to have that relationship where you can be they take your call when you work with your local lender. And they should be somebody that does offer a variety of products. So that person, you know, the intricacies of an FHA loan and a VA loan, and there's even different types of conventional loans. There's a lot to it. So you really need a lender that is your partner, that will take your call, and that when you make that introduction to a buyer, they're going to jump on that buyer and give them the same level of service that you're going to be giving them. When I get to this part of the timeline here where I have the executed contract, and part of my checklist is, of course, to send that lender a copy of the contract, I also want to be reminding my client everything that I'm doing for them. So I'm putting them on that initial email where I'm saying, hey, congratulations to, you know, Melissa. She's just went under contract to purchase 123 Main Street. Here's her contract. Here's a copy of her earnest money deposit. These are the important dates for financing that we have in the contract. Please let me know if you need anything else. So your client is knowing, and you're showing them that you're on the ball, that you're doing a great job for them for contract to close right from the get-go with the initial paperwork to the lender. And then you let the buyer know the lender's going to be reaching out to you today or tomorrow, and you need to get going right away. You need to make application for this property right away. So working with the lender is super important. And the next step on the timeline is having a home inspection. Well, it used to always be that we were having home inspections. We're not always having home inspections right now, which I really am not a fan of. But we're going to keep it on here because hopefully we're going to go back to the time when everyone's doing a home inspection. And it's important that you have a reputable local home inspector that you're referring clients to, because the home inspection is an enormous piece of the contract to close. You know, home inspect, and I'm going to speak in as general terms now and for the rest of our time today, in as much general terms as I can, because we have different guidelines depending on what state we're practicing in. I practice in Maine and New Hampshire, but I know that you folks out of that area have very different rules and regulations. So it's important that part of your training is that you're making sure that you understand what your guidelines are for your state, and that's what your leadership is for. But you know, home inspections are generally for significant issues that have not been previously disclosed. So it's really important that we're educating our buyers on what a home inspection is for. Has anyone seen a home inspection report? Yeah, they're awful. They're like this thick, a lot of pages. And so you need to let your buyers know that the home inspection, that the job of that home inspector and the home inspection report is to point out every single thing that's wrong with the house, from very small to very big. So the purpose of the home inspection is a twofold. We want to educate the buyer about how they're going to be maintaining this home after they close. It's going to help give them the first 6 month to-do list, the 1 year, the 5 year, the 10 year. What is the list of maintenance items that you're going to want to start putting down in writing, so that once you own the home, you know what you're going to have to do to maintain it and maybe make any possible improvements to it. And the other thing is to discover anything significant that was not disclosed. So before we went under contract, I hope you all read those property disclosures with your client before you wrote an offer. And yeah, I've had agents not read the property disclosure before they write an offer. Don't be that agent, please. They're there for a reason. Your buyer's not always going to read them carefully, but we read them carefully before we help somebody prepare an offer. Because that's the disclosure piece that comes into play when we get to this home inspection. So we want to make sure we're going through that. We want to make sure that the buyer understands, listen, that the report's going to look bad, because even if it's a perfect home, it's going to point out every small and large thing that could be wrong with the home. But that's a good thing, because now you can keep that report and you can have access to it for the entire time you own the home, and you'll be able to go back and reference that. But if we're going to see some small things here at the home inspection, we don't go back and renegotiate on that. Because generally, right, we negotiate a contract 2 times, once when we go under contract and another time after home inspection. Okay. So we're going to talk about home inspections on the seller side as well, but from the buyer's perspective and on the buyer timeline, when I had communicated with the lender that we were under contract, this is where I also communicate with the lender and I advocate for my buyer, please don't order an appraisal until we're past home inspection. And why do we do that? Because they pay for it as soon as you order it. And appraisals are expensive. They can be $500 to $800, depending on where you are, who the appraiser, who the lender is. If it's a multifamily, then it's going to cost more for an appraisal. And I don't want my buyer to pay for that if something bad is going to be discovered at the home inspection. We also don't want to give away leverage, right? We don't want that seller. We don't want to show the seller all our cards being like, oh no, we're pulling every trigger, because by the time your buyer pays for a home inspection, pays for appraisal, we now have real money at stake. The more real money that we can't get back for our buyer means we're all in. So I hold that card back until after we're done the home inspection. And then when we sign off on the home inspection contingency, then I let the lender know that, you can order the appraisal now. So that piece actually isn't on this timeline. So we're going to actually plug that in right now after the home inspection, right above that area over, can you see my mouse moving around right about here? That's where we are going to put in title. And in some states, if there's anyone here from Massachusetts, that could be attorney. From New Hampshire and Maine perspective, where we use title companies. So that's why I put title in here. But if you're from an attorney state, then that would be attorney. So generally those folks would get engaged at this point of the timeline. And that's also when usually my lender will pull those 2 triggers at the same time. They're going to order the appraisal and order the title all at the same time. And that's, those are 2 more, that's another person or another company that we now have to make sure that we're keeping informed, that we're calling and introducing ourselves to. Every piece of this timeline is a piece that we have to now make sure that our communication is on point We want to be ahead of all of these people on the timeline so that we're giving them information and documents before they need it, so that when they do their piece of the job, they have everything that they need to do it effectively. And we do that because the more efficient they are, the better experience our client has. And that's the goal along this whole timeline, is to give the best possible experience to our buyer. And we're also educating our buyer as we go through, what is the lender going to expect? What is the home inspection going to expect? And what is our attorney or our title company going to be expecting from us? And what am I going to need? What is that buyer going to need to do for them to keep moving us forward as efficiently as possible? Okay. They're generally going to now be asking for like a buyer information form to be filled out, right? The title or the attorney is going to need information from the buyer on how to prepare for all the documents that are going to have to be signed at closing. They're going to do a title search. Your buyer doesn't know what that is. So this is also, you know, where it's important to understand your buyer and how much information do they really want. Some buyers don't want a lot. They might be the personality type where just tell me what I have to know, what I have to do, and don't give me any details. So you have to learn that early on, because if you now start throwing up process all over them, they're going to get very annoyed and not have a good experience. But maybe you're working with somebody that's an engineer type that really needs to understand and analyze everything. So for that person, you are going to throw up a lot of information to them because they need it. That's what they need to feel comfortable. So you need to know your buyer's love language here and speak to them the way that they want to be spoken to, and communicate to them the way they want to be communicated to. Okay. And when we're talking about communication with our buyer and everybody on this timeline, it's important to know what types of communication are the most effective, right? We've talked about this during Ignite. I forget which sessions, but how you're communicating with them. Is this a phone call? Is this a text? Is this an email? If I sent the email, how do I know they read it? Because the thing about contract to close is that there's a lot of deadlines wrapped around this. So if you just send over an email, we don't know if it's been read. What if there's a deadline wrapped around that? Lenders have a lot of deadlines that we need them to meet. So if I have something really important that is happening here with, you know, the lender, now with the home inspections done, I can't just whip off an email and assume that it's been read. So you need to do a lot of follow-up and get a lot of confirmation from people with everybody along this timeline that what you need to have taken place actually has taken place. So title company or attorney, I would pop in there. Home insurance. So, you know, your buyer's going to need to have an insurance binder. And generally, this is a topic that your lender will have had a conversation with your buyer about this. But remember, we're driving the bus, not the lender, not the title company, not the home inspector. We are in charge. So we need to take charge. And we need to have been warning them that they're going to be needing a home insurance binder. And we need to know what that looks like earlier on. You know, for some reason, this is the thing at the very end when you're trying to schedule your closing and you're asking the lender, are we clear to close? They're like, yeah, I don't have my home insurance binder yet. I see Erin nodding her head, right?
Every time. And you know, if you're with Keller Williams, though, remember they can do it right through your app now. So there's insurance on there. So if it's the 11th hour and they don't have an insurance person, they can get like 5 quotes right away. So,
but guess what? They forget. Remember in the beginning, I said the buyers are going to forget a lot of the stuff. So when you tell them that they have like 25 things that they're going to have to do for contract to close, it's like deer in the headlights, right? They're not going to remember everything. So we tell them things when they, you know, let them get a couple of important things done. Like, let's get your lending going. Now you've made application, you've passed in all your docs. You got to be warning them. Have you reached out to an insurance person? The lender's going to need that. We don't want the lender waiting for anything. That is what holds up closings. And delaying a closing will not make you look good. Even if it's not your fault, guess what? Anything that goes wrong is your fault. whether it's your fault or not your fault, it's always the agent's fault. So home insurance. I have a local insurance guy, and part of one of my automatic emails that I send out during the contract to close process is connecting them. Ask the question, and don't just send the email. You got to follow that stuff up when you're doing your, when you're talking to them with a buyer, when you're under contract. You might be talking to them 3 times a week. If you're only talking to them once a week, you might be missing something. But if it is 1 time a week, make sure you're not forgetting the insurance part, because it always has to happen, and it's usually the last minute. Your buyer's going to ask, if maybe they haven't, maybe they don't even know to ask. So sometimes we have to tell them information that they don't know to ask us about. And really, if they have to ask us a question during contract to close, we're not doing it right. We should be anticipating the questions as much as we possibly can, because really a lot of it is the same questions every deal. So anticipate the questions. And really, if you're nailing contract to close, you're giving them the information before they have an opportunity to ask you the question. Yep, they're going to have to pay for a year's worth of insurance up front at the closing. No, they don't have to write the check when they agree to that binder. It will get taken, it will be handled out of the money that they have to bring to closing. That's really what's going to be important to them is, am I going to have to pay for it, up front at closing? What's that going to look like? And we also, insurance, people aren't always thinking about flood insurance. Like, flood insurance can be a big deal. It can add a lot of money onto a policy. So, are there indicators with the property that might lead you to think that there could potentially be flood insurance? You should be finding that out in the beginning, because if your buyer's really tight with their finances and now they haven't gotten their insurance quote until the very end of the transaction, and that insurance agent runs what's called a clue report, which is a report that they run on the property. We'll tell them, what claims have been made on the property in the property's history. And they'll also find out if it falls within a flood zone. If you're an FHA buyer and you're in a flood zone, your policy premium just went up significantly. It could have gone up a couple $1,000s. Spread out over 12 months of payments, that's a significant bump. It could bump them out of being able to afford this house. So we can't forget about home insurance. I think it's kind of like, easy to forget, kick it down. It's not my job. It's not my responsibility. But if the home insurance goes wrong, it could impact, your buyer's ability to buy the house. And even if they can afford it, just that they have to pay so much more potentially, and they weren't warned about it, is the fly. That could be the fly in the dessert, just that alone. So we want to be thinking about home insurance during this timeline. And they have home warranty here on the buyer timeline. So I used to do a lot more with home warranties when we were in a buyer's market. Not so much now that we're in a seller's market, but you will see that come around again. Home warranties can be fantastic. They're really, you pay for a home warranty, and basically the buyer would get the warranty once they close on the property, and it would protect them for some for systems that might break down during the policy period of having that home warranty, like if their furnace breaks. Or something else significant in the house. That's what a home warranty is for. And there's several providers for home warranties out there. There's several levels of how much coverage they can get. But the more coverage you have, the more it costs. There are times when it's been more of a buyer's market that I've had our sellers, as part of our marketing package, provide a home warranty as a way to attract buyers. So we're going to talk about that, because it's not always going to be the market that we're in today. The market will shift. It's a guarantee that it will not always look like this. And when we are in a buyer's market, a home warranty could be a fantastic tool. It could also be a great tool if, maybe your buyer is entering into a property that is older, that maybe there are some concerns about the systems. This may be a tool for you to build their comfort level with entering into a property that has older systems. I don't know if anybody has any experiences with home warranties here, but if you do, feel free to jump in. A great tool to keep in your toolbox for, you know, a couple of years or however, 6 months, who knows when this market's going to shift. And then the last phase is closing. So that's the timeline, really. We got to get to the closing table. So we do the final walkthrough before the closing. That final walkthrough looks like we're making sure the house is empty and clean, so that when we transfer keys over to the to your buyer, they're not walking into a problem. So the one thing I'll say about this piece of the timeline and the close, excuse me, the closing is, if you are putting somebody in a property and there's indicators around that property from the showing and the inspection that you could be walking into a problem here for the final walkthrough, that's your job too. You gotta ward that off. One of the biggest possible potential disasters here at the closing table is that you go to the walkthrough and it's not empty and it's not clean. Oh, I thought they'd want those 25 old paint cans, so I left them here. Nope. Thought they'd want that half empty bottle of Windex. Nope, they don't. They don't want they don't want your old cleaning supplies. They don't want your nasty old broom that you thought that they would want. They don't want any of that stuff. So when you're walking around the house for the showing and for the home inspection, those are some of the things that you're looking at. You're looking at what's in this basement that I'm going to have to be worried about if we go under contract and we're going to do a final walkthrough. Is there an enormous pile of like scrap wood down there that the homeowner had been using for projects? Is there, old screens down there that don't fit windows anymore? You have to be looking for those things, because now when we're getting to be 2 weeks before closing, a week before closing, we're communicating with the co-broke, the seller's agent, to say, hey, how's the house looking? Have you been by? How's the seller doing with moving out? We're going to be looking for all of this stuff in the basement to be taken out of there. All those paint cans, all the cleaning supplies. We're going to be looking for the exterior to be empty too, right? Sometimes we go to a property and you look under the deck. Stuff for 40 years might have been piling up underneath that deck. Empty and clean means inside and outside, but we have to be specific. We can't assume that the seller and the seller's agent knows that, because sellers think that the new owner's going to want all that stuff, and they really don't. And we can't assume that the seller's agent's going to do their job, because we drive the bus in both directions. And we want to get to that walkthrough and have our buyer be ecstatic, excited that they're going to be closing on this home. We don't want them walking in going, oh my God, what are we going to do now? Look at all this stuff here.
But Susan, that's good mayonnaise. We just opened it last summer.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's going to be fine. Yeah. I mean, Yeah. We just talked about this in contracts yesterday at our market center, what broom swept means, and just, Yep.
Susan, what do you do when you go to the walkthrough and there still is like paint cans or, stuff in the back of the property that you assume, which you never should do, but that was going to be taken out and cleaned? What do you?
Pam, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking it. We have a lot of people that we have resources for, and one of them, and your market centers probably have them too, are people that will do cleanouts on the fly. Yeah. So I have gone to those. Every walkthrough that I have gone to has not always been perfect. So I have that person on speed dial. The most effective thing is to try to curb it ahead of time. So for example, I have a closing. It was supposed to close tomorrow. Now it's going to close next week because the seller doesn't have everything out of the house. So I started calling the listing agent last week saying, is she going to be out? Is she going to be out? Is she going to be out? And, is it going to be empty? How much stuff does she have? Because I knew because I communicate so much with the listing agent. I communicate with her on this stuff during the transaction. I knew it was going to be an issue. So I also warn my buyers about that. Like, they technically have until Tuesday to close, even though we're trying to close on Friday. It's going to be a challenge for this seller to get everything out of the house. So we're going to be monitoring that. So I'm not surprising them. So that's important if you think it could potentially be a problem. Communicate with the listing agent so that you're tag teaming this. Do you need a number for someone to do a clean out?
Yeah.
But if you do get there and there's stuff there, it's going to happen. I mean, I would be lying if I said I haven't shoved stuff in my car. I have at a walkthrough. And I do have that person on speed dial, and I have had to pay for it sometimes when it's my seller. And sometimes, guys, we have that seller. It's not always the agent's fault, the co-broke's fault. I have had that seller who left one of those dishwashers that was supposed to be gone. You know, there's these portable dishwashers where you wheel it over to the kitchen sink.
It's called the center island, but go ahead. Yeah. Great story. Yeah.
And you hook the hose onto your kitchen faucet.
Yes.
It's like 55 years old.
Why wouldn't they want that? It still sort of works. Yeah.
You know, I think they were going to have thought they were going to have dirty dishes while they were moving in. Nope, nobody wants that. Yeah. I told you nobody wanted that. So yeah, I had to pay for, and you know what the important, Pam, thing about that scenario is how you react. Okay, we react calmly and professionally. Even if the inside of our head is screaming, it never comes out our mouth, because that does not serve anybody, and it doesn't serve your client. What serves your client is taking charge and saying, you know what, I got this. I have a solution. I'm going to make this work. We are closing today. Even if you have to take 5 minutes and go to your car and kind of wipe the sweat off your forehead, you know, have those people in your speed dial, people that will do clean outs. And if you don't know of those people, ask your market center. I guarantee you that there's agents that have someone.
Yeah. So in our market center, we've got a phenomenal talent. Her name's Leah Jensen. She's New England Pickers. And she'll show up with two things: the trailer for the dump and the truck for the consignment shop, because they will bring stuff to their shop. So if there are clients who think somebody might love this, she can determine that. She's going to move everything out of the way. We had 1,000 years ago, we had a walkthrough on Bellamy in Dover, and the young couple was super excited, and they're walking in, and the couple was parting ways. So he took his stuff, she took her stuff, and they left a lot of stuff. So the walkthrough, everyone was crying, me included. I got Leah on. So we went to the closing, finished the closing. I took them to the longest liquid lunch ever. And then Leah texted me and said, standing tall. And we brought them back to the house, and it smelled like chemicals and pine sol, which I'm old school. I wanted to smell like everything that was there is now dead. Yeah. But it was like a commercial when we walked in, and she had it. So having those people in your speed dial. The other thing I know that Erin does, if Erin has somebody she knows is going to be that person,
yes,
Erin's going to be leaving like Orange Theory and being like, all right, I'm already a sweaty mess. I'm just going to swing by. And she walks into the Lindsay's house. She's like, hey, Tim and Janina. So we're making a little progress, but she's ready to move stuff if she needs to. Now, the embarrassment of the client is like, oh, no, we'll get it done. Well, here's the thing, Tim and Janina, you don't need to get it done. Here's Leah's number. Let's give her a call together, right? You almost have to intervene.
Yeah, I do. I have very scheduled client pop buys the last couple of weeks, especially if I know, like Susan's talking about, I have that seller who's not going to get their stuff out. And I, hey, I'm just going to bring coffee by, let you know, update you where we are in the process, check in, we'll say hi. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So it looks like you haven't made that much progress, right? Like, and I do it in a way that's sort of proactive. What can I do to help you? What do we need to do? What's the plan? When are your kids coming to help you pack? Are they still able to do that? Who can I get somebody here to help you?
You realize the walkthrough is in 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. You sometimes have to be pushy a little bit.
Yeah. It always takes longer to pack up than sellers anticipate that it is. So
for sure.
We start talking to, this is a buyer timeline. We start talking to that listing agent way ahead of time. And someone's saying, what is the average price of these cleaning services? I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, because I've paid, sometimes I pay for cleaning. I've had scenarios where I might have both sides of the deal, and I really want that buyer to have that awesome experience, because I know they're only going to live in this house for 2 years, and then I want them to call me when they want to sell it. I've paid $700 to have a condo cleaned. It was a high-end condo, but it all depends. So I'm hesitant to throw out a price on that. You probably just should ask some folks in your market center what they've paid.
Well,
it's going to be a few $100 on the
yeah,
3 to 4 at least.
So the other thing too is if there's furniture or any items that can be sold, it can offset the cost of that clean out. So there's a million scenarios with that. If you're removing appliances and beds, like we've all seen all of the the bags of trash. Like you don't want to do it in a dress or a suit, so stay ahead of it and do it early.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, there was enough stuff at that property that when I spoke to Leah, I said, they've given you license to throw all of it away. And she said, I'll be able to sell this and be profitable. So it was a wash for our team. It was a wash.
Yeah.
And our clients were thrilled. And our clients, again, were the buyers, not the sellers.
Yeah.
So
when I bought my house, we had a situation where there was hazardous waste in the basement, as well as an old furnace.
Yes.
We did the walkthrough. It was still there. We asked them to move it. They moved it into the shed.
Move. You said move it. You weren't clear, Mike. You weren't clear.
I don't know quite how that went, but either way, we drove past. The way we knew where they put it in the shed was we drove past on the way to the closing and saw it there. So at closing, we were able to ask for, I think we negotiated a price. I think it was around $300, and it ended up being within $50 of what it cost to remove it, and I was happy with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's pretty common.
You just have to be solution oriented and be calm and be the person that takes charge in that scenario. The listing agent, it might be beyond them to do that, because not every agent is great at handling stress. And it's not their fault. I mean, it is, but it isn't. I mean, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It just has to get done. So have those resources so that you can get to the closing table, and then you sit at the closing table, and we want everybody to be happy that's sitting around there. We want that to be a really great experience for our buyers.
And I'll say too, I know like in Maine, I'm not sure what the other states, the wording's like, but it only has to be in like broom clean condition. Yeah. So that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So we make sure to let our buyers know, it may not be sparkly clean when you walk in there. So if they, want a cleaning service, not a bad idea.
Yeah, the reason why I ask for the prices is because I know a few individuals that have cleaning services and they're just starting off as well. And since I became a realtor again, they're asking me, are there any services that they could provide for other realtors? So I'm trying to figure all that out for them.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. And for our fellow agents too, in case they need someone on speed dial,
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think if you're a homeowner, and I think as a listing agent, I would certainly offer this. If your homeowner has a contract with Tim and Erin scrubyourstuff.com, I'd be like, listen, for your final clean, when everything's out of the way, I'm going to make the final payment. We're not getting into a cleaning business. Don't worry. When I'm going to make the final payment, I'm going to pay them for the final walkthrough cleaning. Like, you guys don't have to do that, because now we know that this company's been hired and they can't come in and say, oh, it really needed a deep clean. Well, you were the last one to clean it, stupid. Like, they're probably just going to come through with some Windex and a smile and really do one last sweep through. I think for some homeowners, and we've all met this person, moving that couch away from the wall since before the Patriots' first Super Bowl, like, their house may require a deep clean if they've been living there since the Truman administration. So you're not going to get a break on that kind of stuff. And having a cleaning company ready for that conversation too. and maybe if you get somebody on speed dial, like the house that we dealt with in Dover was a relatively clean house. It was just left in a whirlwind of a mess because two people were parting ways from a marriage. So everybody sort of left their stuff. It needed a little bit of a clean, but not that deep clean, octogenarian couple, and they haven't really gotten behind the couch in 30 years. That's going to be a different conversation. But I think it's smart because, or gifting your sellers, as swinging by as they're starting to pack, bringing in the Swiffer, because broom clean, to everybody's point, but I think if we add a little moisture, a little cleaner, and mop a little bit, and everybody's different. At the same time, some people in this market too, and this is what I don't want you guys to get hung up on. I just sold a house last week. There was a dead body in the kitchen. Nobody cared. We can't behave that way. The standard moving forward is, what does a house look like when I buy it from Kenyon Productions? It's always standing tall. That's your standard, right? Yeah. Because Gary wants us to behave for the market that is yet to come. And you're going to have to get competitive soon when we go buyer light, listing heavy. So.
Yeah. That's the buyer timeline. And we're going to see some of this pop over to our seller timeline, which we're going to talk about next. And, the thing about a seller timeline, man, sellers have a lot to do to get ready to get to that closing table. And, we of course start with the accepted offer, that executed contract. And so from the seller perspective, we really need to start preparing them because they have so much to do. So when we're working with the seller, we have to prepare them for an inspection. And that is very stressful. So managing your seller's stress can be accomplished through communication. And again, it's the love language thing, right? We need to know what their love language is. We need to find out what their stressors are, what they're worried about, because they might not just tell us. So we have to kind of pull that out of them sometimes. But as far as the inspection, because that's going to be the next thing for them, is we have to have them have the property be ready for an inspection. So what does that look like? It looks like, sometimes some houses, we have to tell them the inspector is going to go through the house. Generally the seller is not there. So you're going to need the inspection will be done when the buyer lets us know when it's going to be done. And at that time, you need to be ready to vacate the house for 2 to 3 hours. It can take that long. And then let them know that we need to have the house prepared. So that means that the home inspector is going to be going from top to bottom or bottom to top, however they start. My inspector starts in the basement, and they need to be able to get to all of the systems. So if your seller has put everything, they stage the house and put everything they own in the basement so that it's not in the main part of the house, or maybe that's just how their basement looks. We need to let them know that the seller and the buyer needs to be able to walk up to every system. If there's a water filtration system, the heating system, whatever is down there, they need to get to it. They should be able to see all 4 walls down to the floor of the basement. They need to check that. They're going to be checking the foundation. They need to be able to see the wall all the way down to the floor. So we really should have a perimeter around the basement that the inspector and that buyer can walk around the parameter of the basement. If then they're going to go, so really it's basements and attics that can be the challenge for getting access to. They're going to then go through every piece of the house. They're going to be turning on the water. They're going to be flushing toilets. They're going to be opening cabinets. They're going to run the dishwasher. When they get to needing to, they're going to be opening and closing windows. When they get to the attic part, some houses just have that scuttle hole that you access through a closet. If that's how the attic is accessed, they need to empty out that closet. I don't want to touch their stuff. I don't want to pull their clothes off of, their hanging clothes off of the rod and put it on the bed, so that, because the inspector's going to bring a ladder, they're going to need to get up and look in that scuttle hole if that's how they access the attic. And then you need to let them know what they're going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for signs of mold and moisture. and damage and maybe pests. They're going to be looking to see if there's a pest problem up there. So they need to be able to see that. They're going to be looking to see, you know, is the bathroom vent really venting out of the house, or is the vent just going up to the attic and it's staying there? That's not okay. The ideal scenario here, folks, when because you have the seller, is that you've already looked at this stuff with your seller prior to listing the property. And I'm going to put a plug in here for I'm a big advocate of pre-inspecting your seller's homes. Send an inspector through there before you even list it, then disclose everything. Boy, does that make for a great experience for your seller for contract to close. Phenomenal experience. Because what happens is a lot of the times the buyer might not even do a home inspection because you gave them one to look at before they even wrote an offer. What is also great, and I'm not supposed to be adding things to the slide, but I do add this here because I think it's really just a great best practice to have a pre-inspection, because it makes this piece more transparent. It takes a lot of questions and stress off the table. And if you've already inspected the home for your seller prior to it going on the MLS, then they've had an opportunity to take care of any big significant items that the buyer would want to come back and negotiate on. Because we have to prepare our seller that the purpose of the inspection is for the buyer to find a significant defect that had not been previously disclosed. Because we negotiate twice, right? When we go under contract and at inspections. So you have to have your seller be prepared that that's what the inspection is for. Because if the buyer finds something significant, they're going to come back and ask for some type of compensation for that. Either have you fix it, or have you contribute money to closing to fix it, or a reduction in price to fix it, or maybe they're going to walk away. So boy, this is a big piece of a seller timeline for contract to close, because they're holding their breath to get past inspections. So we want to do a couple of things here. We want to make sure that your seller is aware that this is what the inspection's for. And we want to have negotiated that this inspection gets done as quickly as possible. So when I'm working with the seller, I want to reduce the amount of time for an inspection as much as I possibly can, so that I can get past that. And then, a lot of times the sellers aren't even going to start packing until we get past here. So let's just get past this. It's better for everybody involved to get past inspections quickly. And we want to warn them that it's going to take a while. It could be a couple of hours. And please go to the inspection. Don't say to the buyer's agent, here's the lockbox code, and then you just don't go. We need to be there as an advocate for our seller. We don't interrupt home inspectors. We can't be that person, because now it looks like you're trying to hide stuff, but we can be there to add information if it's necessary. Sometimes an inspector might have a question on something, and the only person that can answer that is the seller. So I can text them and say, hey, we can't find access to this. How do I open this? Or how do I get to this? We can resolve that question right there and then move on. If I'm not there to do that, then that's just a big question that gets added to a list of stuff that we're going to have to get back to. The buyer's going to have to ask. I'm going to have to get more information. I'm going to have to go back to them. It makes the process easier if you're at the inspection. It also makes it so that if you hear of a big issue, you can pre-warn your seller. And I've done that where I'm like, at the inspection, I've been like, hey, Mr. Seller, did you know this about electrical? And before we're even done, the seller's called their electrician and relayed that back to me. And I'm letting the buyer and the buyer's agent know that they've already reached out to their electrician. And boy, does that make the buyer feel great. So be at your inspection and be an advocate for your seller. At least be there to hear what's going on. Because as soon as that inspection's over, they're going to call you and say, how'd the inspection go? Well, you can't answer them if you weren't there. And we get paid a lot of money, folks, for the job that we do. And that means that we have to show up and be there for these things. And we have to remember that sellers are under a lot of stress, and we need to be able to communicate and set expectations. So inspections are a big piece of that. Once we're past the inspection, the seller timeline goes to appraisal. So we have to let them know what's going to be happening there too, right? So the lender orders the appraisal. You, the listing agent, gets a call from the appraiser, and you set an appointment to go out there. We need to let the seller know, because the appraiser might only be there for 15 or 20 minutes, but boy, do they hold a lot of power over this transaction, especially right now where buyers are paying over asking price in a lot of scenarios. They're really paying past the top of the market. Well, we still need properties to appraise for a lender to lend on them. And this has become a very stressful piece for a seller. So we need to educate and communicate to our seller that the process for the appraisal is that I'm going to meet an appraiser there. They're going to go through the house. They're going to take pictures of the rooms, but the bulk of their work is done running comparables. And they spend a lot of time on that and filling out their report, because if you don't tell them that, the seller's like, oh my gosh, this appraisal came in low. He was only at my house for 15 minutes. Now they're mad. So we need to communicate with them what the process of the appraisal is. And we need to let them know that we're not going to get a copy of the appraisal. We're wanting to hear that we are at or above purchase price. That's all we need to know, seller, because they're going to want to know what the number is. So we might as well just let them know right now. The seller doesn't get the number, that the buyer owns that appraisal. The only time we really get the number is if the appraisal comes in low. And then we work as a team to resolve that with the buyer's agent. And again, then we're getting to the close, right? The closing table. And so a lot of the stuff that we talked about with the buyer and the walkthrough, now we just have to reverse that, and we have to be preparing the seller for what does that final walkthrough look like. You know, some sellers don't think they have to be out of the house at closing. They think they can do that after. I have had that. So we have to make sure that the seller understands, you know, part of your contract is empty and clean, if that's what your contract states. We have to let them know that during the process of being under contract, they have to maintain that home the way that the buyer has seen it at the time of the showing, at the time of making an offer. That means we mow the grass. It means we rake the leaves in the fall. It means we plow the driveway and shovel walkways in the winter. I have gone to a seller's home the night before closing and had the grass be so tall, and I knew it was going to be a problem because I had worked with this seller before. And you have to know how to communicate with your seller. And sometimes it can be very direct. And in that situation, it was, Terry, go mow the damn lawn now. He's like, no, I don't have to. I'm like, no, you really do have to. You really have to go over there tonight. We cannot show up for the walkthrough tomorrow with the grass being that tall. And then he got there and he was like, oh God, Susan, you were right. But you have to know how to talk to your seller. Some sellers, you get away with stuff like that. Some sellers, you don't. Most of them, you don't. But they do have to maintain the property. They have to keep their services on. They have to keep oil in the tank, people. You know, it's a vacant property. They have to keep oil in the tank. And not every seller will do that if you don't tell them. You know, we can't get there and have no heat in the winter. We can't risk pipes freezing. The electricity should be on up until the day of closing so that it's just being switched over. And we've communicated this with our seller, and we've communicated with our buyers that they're going to have to put services in their name, stuff like that. So, but from the seller perspective, you know, you've got to really prepare them that empty is empty. Broom clean is broom clean.
I might have missed you speak about it, Susan. The best way that you and John have had a listing going into the winter months with a big, delicious pool, and it's been closed, or they're about to close it. Like, what's the best way to hand ownership and proof of services? Like, how walk us through that quickly, like how you would do that to make sure I'm buying it in the dead of winter, and I trust that this is going to be, I'm going to hit the go button in the spring, and it's actually going to work, not explode. Yeah. Right.
So if your seller has always maintained their own pool, this is when you have them engage in a professional to close the pool, and you get documentation on that. Super important with pools or anything unusual, a hot tub or anything like that. If they've always done it themselves, engage in a professional to do it that time and get them to document it, get that contact information, and then you can give that to the buyer, because that's going to be a big concern. If it is, and if there is a pool and it's not winter, it has to be running and clean for some loan types. So you need to make sure that your sellers are aware of that. If it's an FHA loan, you can't have a green, nasty pool when the FHA appraiser gets there. You can't. So we need to, when we're going back to this accepting the offer part, we have to know what the financing type is so that we can be preparing our seller for what that could look like when we get to the appraisal part. You can't assume that your buyer's agent knew what some of the pitfalls of a lending type were. As the listing agent, you need to know what pitfalls the property might have for other lending types, like specifically VA, RD, or FHA, because the property has some requirements there. Peeling paint, any rot, peeling paint on any building on the property. If that is there, you need to have a conversation with your seller. Like, are you going to be able to correct these issues prior, if that's who our buyer ends up being? If they're not going to, then this accepting offer part shouldn't happen unless you have a conversation with the buyer's agent that, the seller is not in a position to fix anything. So an FHA could be off the table. And we don't want to find that out at the appraisal. And because we do want to get to the closing table. So we need to prepare the seller for closing. We need to make sure they're maintaining the property. We need to let them know that the buyers are going to walk through the property looking for empty and broom clean prior to the closing table. We need to let them know that, they're going to have to pass in all their keys. And that, once those papers are signed, the property is turned over. So that's the ideal date right there. And in here, we don't have title or attorney in here either. So I would stick that in there right after, right around between the inspection and appraisal, because the title company or the attorney is going to have to reach out to the seller. What is their, arranging for their final payoff if they have a mortgage on the property? What does that look like? Some sellers think that they have to actually make that payment. So we need to walk them through that. If that's a question for them, we need to let them know that that title company or that attorney will handle the final payoff. The final payoff is always more than what it says at what unpaid balance says on their mortgage statement. It's always a little more, because mortgages are paid for behind. So we need to warn them of stuff like that. We need to warn them that the seller has to pay for deed prep. Boy, some sellers are like, I'm not paying $150 for a deed prep. Yep, you have to, or else. And my script for that is, well, the seller has to pay for that, or we would have buyers deeding themselves property all the time. We don't want that. So the seller does have to pay for that. So there's some things in there that we warn them about the process. We try to manage their stress, and we do that by communicating and setting expectations. Does anybody have any questions on a seller timeline? All right, we're going to charge ahead. Maybe. So, plotting communication points. So the goal here is you tell them what is happening and next steps before they call you with questions. That is so powerful and really providing excellent service when we can do that. And what do you do? What do you need to communicate, or who do you need to communicate with? we need to communicate with everybody. We need to make sure that everybody is on the same page all of the time. So, you know, when I have the seller, I'm communicating with the buyer's lender, and I'm communicating with the buyer's agent. When I have the buyer, I'm communicating with the lender, and I'm communicating with the seller's agent. So yeah, you're communicating with the lender regardless of what side of the deal you're on. They're only going to tell you information that's pertinent to the transaction, that is information that they're allowed to share with you. But it's important to know, where is the buyer at with this file? Like, have they turned in all their docs to you? We can ask those questions. We don't want to find out that there's a problem with child support at the end of the, towards the end of the transaction. And it's always child support that can be a deal killer. We want to be making sure that the buyer, our buyers, we're communicating with them. Don't buy a new car till after closing. Don't open another credit card. How many buyers people have bought a car right before closing? I'm like, what? Buyers get spend happy.
Just for clarity, trucks are problems too. Just want to make sure we're clear. That's all. Yeah, yeah. She said car. No, trucks are bad too. It's all bad. Yeah.
It's all bad. Yeah. We have to communicate with everybody. You know, your checklist should have a schedule of when you need to talk to each party. I talk to lenders, regardless of who I represent, every week, even if there's no new news. The lender should be communicated to every week. When they know that you're going to be on top of it, they're going to be more on top of it because they're going to be expecting your call. We need to be talking to the title companies or the attorneys. Like, has the title cleared yet? I need to let my seller know that the title is clear. Or the buyer needs to know that the title is clear. If there's a cloud on it, we need to have that taken care of. The inspector, we have to make sure that when we make that appointment with the inspector, with the buyer, that we are telling the co-broke right away. I let my lender know when I have the buyer, when the inspection is, so that they can kind of be anticipating when I'm going to be calling for the appraisal to be ordered. So we talk to everybody. And we communicate, you know, the communication points are, how are we communicating? Are we texting? Are we emailing? Are we calling? And please don't be afraid to pick up the phone. There's a lack of actually picking up the phone, and we are in a picking up the phone business. We can't resolve an issue with a co-broke if we don't pick up the phone. We can't resolve it effectively without picking up the phone, because when there's a problem, we need to have a good relationship with them so that as a team, we're resolving this. Relationship is for this transaction, and it's for future business. So this is where we're always thinking about future business. The better we make this transaction, the more likely it is that we're going to have repeat and referral business. And I do a lot of my business at this point in my career is repeat and referral business, because I give them such awesome service that when they refer me, they're confident that I'm going to take very good care of whoever they're referring me to. They're not going to want me to help their parents if I haven't taken good care of them. And they won't know how much I care about them until I show them how much I care. The co-broke, oh my goodness, you really have to have a great relationship with your co-broke. It will make or break you. We want that co-broke, the next time they see an offer on the table with our name on it, we want them to want to work with us again. That could make or break, that could be the difference for your next buyer winning a contract, that your name is on that offer. Because, you know, if I have multiple offers and I've had a very bad experience with an agent, that gets transferred on to my seller. It just does. Some people don't agree with that, but I'm a very direct person, and I'm not giving my seller good service if I don't forewarn them that I've done 2 deals with this particular agent and they've backed out, or they've done this, or it's been a bad experience, and I do it professionally. I don't bitch and complain, but I have to pass that on. So don't be that agent, be somebody that your marketplace wants to work with. And not just for, you know, the next deal, but for when they're out and about in the community and someone says, John and Susan Kenyon, I want other people to be like, you know what, they're really great to work with. I think you're going to have a good experience with them. Those pieces are so important for your reputation and your future business that I would be remiss if I didn't warn you that your co-broke relationships are super duper important, and they really can be developed during the contract to close process. When we have a buyer and maybe the seller is challenging, it's not all that co-broke might be doing the very best they can. We have to push that co-broke on behalf of our buyer, but we do it in an understanding way. Like the one that I had a delayed closing on till next week. You know, I have a great relationship with her, and I'm like, Ann, I know you're doing everything you can and you're in a tough position, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't have sellers that did this to me too. So I appreciate you pushing them as hard as you can. Build that relationship. And that can, sometimes it's verbal. So if it is a verbal, if it is significant enough, pick up the phone and call them. If it's an email, there's tone in email. So have your communication be very polite and friendly in email. Hello, I hope you're doing well. Oh my gosh, do I get annoyed when I get an email from a co-broke and everything they want to say is in the subject line. Seriously? Give me a break. And there's tone in an email. So it might not even be what you're trying to say, but how is it being perceived? Because how that communication is being perceived is important. So every email, every time, if it's coming out of my office, says, "Hi, Adrienne, I hope you're doing well." Then I say what I have to say. Then have a great day. It's never just see you on Tuesday. Well, what does that mean? So be cautious of your communication points and how you're communicating. It's also very important that we're always the calm and professional one, because there's plenty of times in a contract to close scenario where things can get very heated. So put everything in writing and be calm and professional. And when you have a scenario during contract to close where maybe you're doing inspections and the buyer is a little old lady and she needs to have a handrail tightened, and that's not a significant defect that wasn't previously disclosed, and the seller is a young man that's a contractor, how easy is it for him to tighten the damn handrail? I mean, seriously. So this is where communication's important, right? So we call them up and we say, look, I get that this is not a significant issue, but it's a concern for my buyer because of whatever issue. That's why we're asking for this. If I just send over that request, they're gonna go, no, handrail is not a significant issue, we're not doing it. But when I can pick up the phone and have a conversation around that, then the likelihood of the seller, guess what? Most time in that scenario, the seller's going to be like, oh my gosh, they might fix other things there now knowing that. And I've had that happen where they're like, oh, okay. So they might, this might be a challenge in the bathroom for them. And they go and fix that stuff. And if it's opposing views that are having a hard time meeting in the middle, then our script looks like this. Jack, your client feels this way about that issue and they're right. My client feels this way about this issue and they're right. So what are we going to do together to resolve this in a way that we can all move forward? Okay, we're validating people and we're communicating verbally. If we don't do it in such a manner that we can move forward, then the deal falls apart. And nobody wants that, because we have we have a buyer that wants to buy and a seller that wants to sell. How, Jack, are we going to handle this and move forward? Find some one-liners that you can use with your co-broke to keep things moving forward, because at the end of the day, both the agents want this to close because we need to get paid. We have a buyer that wants to buy and a seller that wants to sell. So we need to serve them, and we really want everyone to win. We create win-win scenarios when we have great communication points, and we plot those. They're on checklists. We're on purpose about them. We're not haphazard about them. So as you're building your contract to close checklist, call lender, call title, communicate with buyer, communicate with my seller. Write them down so that you are not forgetting your communication points. And remember to say thank you. You know, people like that. If they do a good job for you, they're going out of their way for you. Thank them. Okay, it is, we can get through one more slide before we take a break. So best practices for managing the deal. So when sending documents, so there's a bunch of best practices. So if anybody has one, feel free to jump out and send one. But I would say for one of mine is when sending docs to anyone, to documents or things for signature, even if it's not for signature, follow it up with a phone call or a text. Because sometimes we send them and the other person might be on the, you know, maybe that agent's on the road all day and they're not checking their email. But if I call them or text them and say, hey, I just sent over, you know, the addendum for signature from your side, now they know to be looking for it. So I'm not going to assume that something has happened without getting confirmation from the other side that it has happened. Use your checklist in command because you will forget to do stuff. You think you're not going to forget, but you do. Once everything's been signed, make sure that your clients have copies of those. And who else needs them? Does your lender need that? So it does no good to get a seller to contribute $1,000 towards closing costs if the lender never finds out. And guess what? They can't be finding out when they're, you know, 2 days before closing. That's stressful. So we need to make sure who else needs this. Does the title company need a copy of this addendum? And make sure that we're giving it to them. That's a best practice. You learn your best practices from the transactions that you do. And I would say another best practice is be timely. If there's a deadline of 2 weeks and you can get that done in a week, fantastic. That's excellent service. Do that. Utilities and property taxes. Yep, absolutely. I don't know what that was in reference to because that was at 10:09. So I apologize, Drew, that I didn't see that earlier. One of the things I've learned from a bad transaction, from a transaction that didn't take place at the end of the deal, is when I have a seller, I now write into my contract that I need a letter from the lender with conditions within a certain number of days of going under contract. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the buyer has sent all of their docs to the lender and gone through underwriting, and the underwriter has spit out the conditions. And the reason I do that is that's when you find out about the child support. Because guess what? Buyers don't tell their lender everything in the beginning. They just don't. They might not think it's important. They might be embarrassed. You know how they find out about the child support? When they look through their bank statements. So that's why I do that. Does anybody else have a best practice for managing the deal? I can't, did you say something? I can't, you're muted. Anybody? No? Okay.
Does it matter what situation it is?
No, either side.
So even if I'm working with a renter, because that's the only situation that I have.
With a renter?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I don't do rentals.
I mean, it's kind of off. It's not off topic, but I've learned, you know, different ways of handling the situation so that I can actually complete the transaction.
Yeah. So what would be your best practice with working with a renter?
So my best practice with working with a renter is just, you know, letting them know the purpose of working with me. Obviously, you know, make it clear that I represent them. There's no actual agreement between a renter an agent, at least in Massachusetts, as far as I know. And I've saw that a lot of renters, they'll actually, you know, say they want to rent, and once they have your services, they don't pay you after that, and there's no tie-in agreement. So I've learned that, you know, you gotta make a system where you at least get paid before you give them your MLS. That's what I've learned.
That's a good one. Yeah, the getting paid part's important.
Yeah, because then you won't.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good one. Anybody else have one?
When do you send the letter asking for conditions?
I build that into my contract. So if I have this, I do this when I have the seller, not when I have the buyer. If I have the seller, when we're negotiating the contract, I write it in as a contingency. I don't know what state, in New Hampshire and Maine, we can write in, there's a blank space in an offer that we can write in additional provision.
26.
Line 26, yes. You're in New Hampshire?
Maine.
Oh, you're in Maine. Yeah, line 26, line 19 in New Hampshire. I write it in there. So, you know, in Maine, there's also not a finance commitment date. So I write that in. So it depends on what state you're in, but I need to know, I need to know from the lending perspective that we're on track. And if the state that you're in doesn't have that contingency or that provision built in automatically, then you've got to write that in. That's a very good best practice, because boy, you know, we can't get to the end of the transaction and find out that we have an issue with lending. If we have issues with lending, then best practices are to find that out sooner rather than later, because now you have a seller taking their property off the market and saying no to qualified buyers. We don't want to wait 4 weeks to find out that we have a lending issue and then have to go back on the market. What if they're under contract to buy something else? And it's not good for the buyer either, because now they've paid for inspections, they've paid for appraisal, maybe they've given notice for a rent for wherever they're renting. So that's a communication point, right? Between the agent, when I have the seller and I'm negotiating that contract for the first time, and I'm putting language in there that tightens the contingencies around financing, how I deliver that to the buyer's agent will determine how they deliver it to the buyer. I need to coach them and script them without them knowing I'm coaching and scripting them, meaning I'm verbally communicating them to them the way I want them to verbally communicate to their side, so that I can achieve what I'm trying to achieve. So I need to point out why this is a benefit to everybody. So part of my best practices is picking up the phone and calling my co-brokes, building rapport. I talk to them the way I want them to talk to their client. If I talk to them like, oh my God, I can't believe that your person wants to ask for that. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That's how they're going to go back and talk to their client. If I talk to them and I communicate with them, I understand where you're coming from. That's this person's perspective, that they're right. This is the other person's perspective, they're right. What we're needing to do is come together. The reasoning behind my side of the communication or what we're asking for is this. I need them to go back that way to their buyer or to their seller. So how you're communicating to them is a best practice. Ask if they have time to talk to you right now. I have, you know, sometimes you'll have agents that will not answer the phone, or they'll just, you know, they'll text me things that really need to be a phone call. I just ask them nicely. I'm like, you know what, this is a phone call conversation. When are you available to chat about this? It might just be that they can't chat right now. Can they chat at 2 o'clock? Find out. Be a good communicator. That could be your number one best practice, that you're going to master communication.
Susan, what are you calling that contingency?
Made up. I totally made it up.
Oh, okay.
It's a financing contingency where I put in that the buyer's lender is going to have to provide me a letter with conditions. It's not a commitment with conditions. It's a buyer's lender. It's a buyer's lender letter with conditions. I need to know what the conditions of his file are. But I have to communicate with that buyer's agent, right? To let them know why I'm doing it. And I let them know I'm doing this for both of us, because I don't want your buyer to get 4 weeks into the process to find out that they have a problem with their financing. We just as a team need to find this out sooner rather than later. And then they go, oh, okay. Because nobody does it. So if you have a best practice that other agents aren't practicing, you now need to go out into your marketplace while you're using those and communicate why it's a benefit to everybody. And guess what? Eventually the other people will start doing it too.
So how soon do you expect the letter?
Well, for that example, I usually do it within 12 days. But you're communicating with the lender, right? So you get them on board with that because they're not used to seeing that one either.
So you'll call them right away?
I call the lender right away regardless. As soon as we're under contract, regardless of what side I have, I call the lender right away.
Right. In that conversation, you mentioned that piece. Is that
if this is part of the contract, I absolutely mention that piece. So you're in Maine. So whatever state I would be in, so I'm in New Hampshire and Maine. When I call the lender, I pull out whatever is pertinent to financing, and I make sure that we're all on board with that.
Gotcha.
Okay. We also let lenders know that we don't change finance types, because lenders want to do whatever is in the best interest of a buyer. And they might have put them in conventional when we go under contract and then realize, oh, they qualify for this. They can't just make those changes. So we need to have communication around that with our lenders. I'm such a squirrel, guys. I'm sorry. I'm getting totally off topic here. Did you have some, Julie, did you have something?
The question was answered. I was wondering how many days, and you said 12 days.
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
And offline, if anybody has a question of that on that, you can always call me or Facebook message me, because I know I'm totally getting off topic on that. So I think this would be a great time for a break. Is this a good time for a break for you guys? Okay. So it's 10:37. How about 10:50? Is that enough time? Okay.
It's enough time to get a beverage, go to the ladies' room, and broom sweep your house. Yeah,
yeah, right.
Plenty of time.
Stand them up.
Standing tall when we get back at 10:50.
All righty. I will see you guys then.
If anybody's got questions, we're hanging out. We're just going to shut off the screen and the mic. But if you got a question, just speak up.
Tim, could I have the phone number for that clean out person? Did you say Leah Jensen?
Oh yeah. If you're within our market center, I think if you're anywhere up this way, they emanate out of beautiful downtown Somersworth, I think. Stand by. I'm gonna give you her bat phone.
Awesome. I think that's a brilliant little tip I got out of today.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, yeah, I mean, I've had her come over. I was not fighting. Well, this is what I do with my in-laws. We have a shed that my wife and I feel is an optical eyesore, and they're like, it's a great place to put the things. I'm like, we need to get rid of the things. I mean, we need to get rid of them, but that's another story for another time, right? So, yeah, so we have this. The shed's fine, but
pick your battles.
Yes. Yeah, we can always do it after the wake, right? So anyway, she came over and full cleaned that entire shed, which, I mean, literally turns into like our Christmas dumping ground. We open the shed and we throw stuff, all the boxes and TV boxes and TVs that die. She did a great job. She'll come. I mean, if you've got like cinder blocks behind a barn, and the buyer wants the barn, but what are we going to do with those cinder blocks? They'll come take that stuff away. Anything she can repurpose is going to go to somebody. Anything she needs to dump, she'll dump. And obviously, if you've got tech stuff, it's going to be $25 to drop off your TV. She's going to factor that into the bill. And if there's anything that would make sense that they could clean up, shine up, and repurpose it in their consignment shop. They would take it off your hands and either pay you for it based on some value, or they'd put it in sort of consignment style. I might be speaking out of school. You might want to have a conversation with her. They're rock stars. It's called New England Pickers. Her cell phone is 603-833-3822. Leah Jensen, Leajensen. And I mean, I guarantee every one of our market centers has somebody like her who does that kind of stuff. And it's a no-brainer. Should have somebody like that on call. Think about when you move. I mean, we moved into our place in Stratford in 2009, and we are like we're at the point where my wife's like, for our 25th anniversary, I want you to get me a dumpster, you know. And we watch a lot of Dateline, so I'm like, how big is this gonna be, you know? So yeah, but like that, and that's so stupid that like at our ripe old age, we're like excited about throwing stuff out, but it's gonna be huge because usually you do all that when you move, right? I mean, the last time the house that we were leasing that we moved out of to move into Stratford back in 2009, we got a full-size dumpster because we knew at that point we had just been carrying stuff and finding places for it. And we did a huge call then. And now it's been 9 years. We got 2 old people living with us. We have 2 short people living with us, even though the short people are taller now. So, you know, 6 quote unquote adults. And then, I mean, you know, I've got a lot of sentimental things, I think. You know, she's got a lot of stuff that I hold sentimental that she'd like to throw out if I wasn't paying attention. And she says she does. She's like, I threw out stuff today. You won't even notice. I guarantee you won't even notice. I'm like, well, I'm not going to verbalize it. I'm going to realize it's missing and just buy a new one, which is going to annoy you even more. And my in-laws think everything. Yeah, they've got some eclectic yard design ideas. I'll just leave it right there. Yeah. Yeah.
We have a thing now that we're putting, we have a sizable like shed barn thing or whatever, and it had accumulated some items. So we've decided each weekend we put something on our driveway and people just take it for free.
Yeah, all day.
So we cleaned out my mother's barn. We had patio stuff, and she got all new stuff. And I'm like, Mom, people don't have the money to go buy new stuff. So why don't we just put the old stuff up front? Because if you go to the store now, you can't even get any because they're out of stock already. And so we put it out there literally like 20 minutes later. Everything was gone.
You want my pro tip for doing that? I think when you put something in your driveway and you put free on it, people are like, oh, Lindsay just put that in his driveway because it sucks. He just wants me to take his pile of suck, right? So pro tip, put free or best offer.
I like that.
I've had guys, we're in Stratford. My driveway is like 2 miles long. I had a guy pack a lunch and he's like walking up my driveway, and I met him. I saw him coming up. I'm like, he's either coming to kill me, punch me in the face for putting free or best offer, or he wants to talk. Thank God he wanted to talk. So we're having this conversation and he's like, what do you want for it? And I'm like, and he's like, well, I don't know. I'm confused. Like, he was so intrigued. He wanted to know why I would free or best offer. And I'm like,
so did you make any money?
I'm like, if you're willing to take it, I'm happy for you to take it. And he's like, all right. You know, I just don't need people at the end of my driveway moving stuff around and then deciding they don't want it. Free your best offer. The best offer makes them feel like it's got, I mean, if they
value,
worth,
you're building value into it. You built value into it.
Yeah, I'm creating exclusivity. I learned that from Gary with real estate. Yeah. Make them feel like they're part of a club. Are you part of Tim's Junk Club? I am. Yeah. It's very exciting.
I got it for 20 or
free your best. Yeah. Because if the guy walks up and hands me a $30 bill, I really win the day. Right. And then I can use that money to buy the stuff my wife is throwing out behind my back. It's the circle of life. It really is. Yeah. Which will then in 2 years be at the end of the driveway with a free or best offer sign on it.
Exactly. It all ends up there. Let's face it.
Yeah.
We're not taking it with us.
There was a meme on social media, and like the current popular meme right now is, you know, you were nice to the dorky kid and now he spawned 3 other dorky kids. And it shows this husband sitting, you know, playing whatever he's playing, probably Call of Duty. And there are 3 boys all playing Minecraft, but they're all sitting in a room. Like, they made this mission control room. And my wife just, you know, we've got two boys, but she's like, I just got 2 more versions of you and you're all a mess. Right. So she just lives in a locker room. I think any mom with, you know, as my wife says, she has 2 sons, 3 boys. Right. Yes. And then the 3 cats.
And
Yeah,
parents on board too. Yeah.
A lot of stuff. Yeah. Well, the in-laws are in a separate part of the house. They're in a separate.
It's still
part
under
of the house.
that same roof. You call it what you
yeah.
want.
Don't get me wrong. They're unfortunately if you don't know, my in-laws are from Australia, so they used to be 10,000 miles away. Now, unfortunately, it's only one American flight of stairs, right? So my new thing that I started the last couple of years is I send Francis, our youngest, down. I'm just like, buddy, go find out what the old people want to drink. Because if I'm sending cocktails down, there's no reason they're going to come up. And then they're less inclined to try to make the climb because now they're, inebriated. So yeah.
Keep
my
them
wife's
happy.
like, it's just going to be a gateway from all the date line. Like one of these drinks is just going to take them over the edge. I'm like, no, I would never do that. Although it's a great idea. Yeah. I should put them at the driveway, free or best offer. Yeah.
Don't be pushing your luck.
No, they're lovely people. I practice saying that without crying. Yeah.
Oh, my mom is 9 houses up the street, and I think that's as close as I'd like it. I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, like, all of our parents are challenging, right? But our in-laws are always the most challenging because my wife will say, she's like, your mom and dad. I'm like, I know, but they're not right here. They're not right here. At least Shirley's annoying from Chelmsford, Mass, right? Yeah. Oh boy.
Well, my in-laws are both deceased, so I don't have any such issues. So my mom has adopted my husband as her own, so that's nice. We keep it easy. Do we have Ignite tomorrow? Is this the last one?
I believe we are in the last session. Correct. You are correct.
Because I don't see any more on there.
Yeah.
I thought it said it went to the 28th, but I put it on my calendar that I had it, but I don't think I really have it.
Historically, in the past, Aaron and I would drag Robert in and do like a tech, put a bow on the whole thing and sort of a tech wrap up. That's not on the calendar. I don't know what the region decided to do for a final session, if there is a final session, but I believe this is session 9/session 18. And tomorrow you guys just got to wake up, pretend to make a few phone calls and start drinking. It's Memorial Day weekend. I've got a tea time at 7:24. My face will not be here.
Oh,
good call.
I'll be launching Titleist into the woods. So pro tip, if you're going to be on the stock market, buy Titleist at 429 before they close, because I'll be adding to your financial greatness in the morning and Saturday too. Yeah. So yeah, keep them coming.
Awesome.
We got a couple more minutes. What we can ask you guys to do, if you have enjoyed the month of May, is make sure anybody who's coming into your market center behind you, anybody in your market center who is unplugged from the education and they feel like there are no resources, the fact that the region is doing this at a regional level is a blessing. Based on our schedule, this will be back in July. Anyone in your market center who missed any of the segments, they can always go to the Keller Williams New England YouTube page and watch the segments. I think you guys will agree. If your face has been here in person the whole time, it's probably a better opportunity to learn, to be in the room with the instructors. Although at the worst case scenario is if you're going to go back and watch the content, it's available. And then we'll be back in July after after the holiday of the 4th to get going with the next session of this. And I don't know how long we'll keep this going. I think we're just going to keep it going. I can see obviously our numbers are a little different this time around, Susan, than they were as we got into COVID. But just make sure your friends stay plugged in. If you've got people in the market center, and I can't say this enough, Gary built this class for any agent who is helping 16 or fewer families in 12 months. And, for a lot of our agents at our market center, based on our averages, it's about 10-ish families to get to capper status. So you can be a capper and you're still not cool enough to say this class is beneath you. And then Gary's intention is once you get to capper status and, hey, you're even doing 16, helping 16, 32 families a year, he wants you to jump on the other side of the desk and be Susan Kenyon and start to instruct it. So there's room for growth in this classroom, no matter which angle you're hitting it from, and make sure you please tell your friends. And above and beyond that, all of our instructors, Susan and everybody else who stepped up over the course of the month to teach, please thank your regional leadership and your market center leadership, and make sure that gets back to Nate so it gets back to Gary, that our instructors did a great job once again.
And these are the basics. You know, I think that these never go away. It's always good to be going back to basics. It's so easy to chase after the next shiny object, but it's the basics that will keep building your business, mastering them.
Yeah. Well, it's the one thing that is the most elementary task of all in our industry that I would argue no one's probably mastered, and we honestly don't probably give enough time in it to grow, is lead generation.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, yeah, I got to put that off. I'm going to get to that next quarter. Like, okay, you probably won't be here, said with love. Like, next quarter is not going to come. You know, next quarter will be here. We'll be here. You might not. Right. So just invite your face to start talking to people. And I think, honestly, real quick before Susan gets restarted, you're 3 easy phone calls right now. May is Military Appreciation Month. Anyone you know that has served our country, to call them. Memorial Day weekend is obviously coming, to call somebody who has served, who is currently serving, or someone who has lost someone who served, and just do a gratitude phone call. I think the refi conversation is super simple. And again, you're coming from contribution. You're asking them, you know, hey, Susan, if you and John were able to refi and save some money, would that be a problem for you? How's she going to answer that? No, that of course it wouldn't be a problem. Awesome. Let's get started. Right. And if they don't want to refi, or they have refied, who else do you know that's smart like us that would like to save money? Or if they don't want to refi, what would be the other side of that coin? Maybe they're going to list, you know? And the other thing is, we're getting into the point where people are taking their masks off and getting vaccinated. God help us. This is phenomenal. Are you starting to host events with your teams? And how cool it'd be if you turned all your lead generation into lead invitation. If you're having an event every 90 days, the way the 36 Connect talks about, every call I'm making to my people is to let them know we have an event coming up and the save the date card's coming. Hope you got the save the date card. Hope you saved the date. It's coming in 2 weeks. It's coming tomorrow. And then the day after is, it was great to see you. Sorry we missed you. Here's what we got next. Real estate can be the background music to every conversation we have with you people. Unless you decide, I'm never going to call anybody till I have to call somebody. It's like, I'm in contrast class because my OP yelled at me because I almost lit the building on fire. Like, let's right. It's learning for learning's sake and learning for earning's sake. And the differentiation between, are you a captive in your business, or are you celebrating it by having the time and the money to do things for others? And it's the way we approach what we're doing. Gary said people want to work with people who they know what you do. They want to work with you because of why you do it. So how do you present yourself to your community? Are you coming from contribution, or are you just hoping for a sale? This is not the boiler room. You can make it the boiler room. You're going to burn out and your life's going to suck. And there's no nice way to say that. So let's rejoice in the opportunity we have in this industry that has not gone away. Look at all your friends in all these other industries. Some that crashed and burned, and we are in the middle of it right now. And it's frenetic. There's a lot of opportunity there. So just dive in.
Cool. You guys ready to get going? Awesome. Yeah, somebody had put in the chat when we were talking about best practices that the buyer had changed from conventional loan to FHA, and the seller got very upset. But they did get through it and they were able to close. That is a big one when you're communicating with your lender for best practices is, you know, they can't change loan type. And I have a canned email that I send to the lender as soon as we go under contract. I have one for when I represent the seller and one for when I represent the buyer. When I represent the buyer, I verbally have those conversations with my lender. I've been using the same lender for a very long time, so she knows how I like to work. But when I'm working with, when I have the seller, the canned email, part of that canned email says this is a blank loan type. Per the contract, we cannot change the loan type. unless both the buyer and seller agree. So because that can be an issue. And the lenders, you have to keep in mind that we're in charge because we know all of the different pieces of the purchase and sales agreement. Everybody else does not have that privilege. The lenders don't look at every piece of the purchase and sales agreement. They look at just trying to do the best job that they can for financing for that person. That's all that they're concerned about. So they don't always realize that they can't just flip and change loan types. It's our job to be communicating that. Which is a great segue into best practices and risk avoidance. And this is like looking at the timeline and answering these questions. You know, where is the deal at risk of falling apart? And what are the best practices to keep the deal alive? What tasks have deadlines, and what are those deadlines? I mean, we have to know them. People, we cannot miss deadlines. And do I see agents miss deadlines? All the time. And it's our job to know what the deadlines in the contract are. They're there, they count, they matter. How can you help manage other parties involved in the deal? These are all part of our job. And when we have best practices, then we avoid the risk of these things happening. So, you know, where is the deal at risk of falling apart? Inspections, for sure, right? The inspections can be the biggest contingency to get past. So what are our best practices to avoid a deal falling apart due to inspections? Well, when we have the seller, a couple of things. We educate them on the importance of disclosure. So it's human nature for a lot of sellers to think, whew, I don't want to tell them all the bad things about my house. They're not going to want to buy it. We need to educate them that the opposite of that actually benefits them the most. The more we disclose, the better the contract we're going to have when we go under agreement. It's best for everybody to know and to be transparent because they're going to find out anyway. So when you walk into a property and you're having a listing consultation and there's a beautiful hardwood floor with a rug on it, you best look under the rug to find out if there's a big mark under there, because it's going to get found out. And when it gets found out, it's your fault. Remember, whenever anything goes wrong, it's the agent's fault. But have I had that? Absolutely. I've gone into the final walkthrough, and where the beautiful area rug was, the rug is gone and there's a big burn mark in the floor. You know, we need to, so where do things fall apart? When we're not disclosing things or during inspections. So for sellers, disclose, so that prior to going under contract, all of these things are known. So they've made their offer knowing the worst about the property. Now, when we go through inspections, we have a lesser chance of the deal falling apart because we were already transparent about those things. Pre-inspect your home if you have the seller. Boy, you want to talk about avoiding risk at inspections, pre-inspect that home. Those would be the two big ones, I think, for risk avoidance as far as inspections are concerned, is really, you know, when we have the seller and we're having the, you know, property disclosures filled out, we're reading them, we're reviewing them, we're making sure that they're complete. We're making sure that they're truthful and honest. That is, you know, a good risk avoidance there. When we have the buyer, we're reviewing the disclosures with them prior to making an offer. Before I write an offer, I go through line by line of any property information and line by line on the disclosure to make sure that they've actually read it, because boy, you know, everybody's so different. You'll have buyers that will not read a thing and they're just like click, 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 signed, and they haven't read anything. And then you'll have other buyers that will like labor over every word. So find out who you're talking to, who you're working with, but reviewing the disclosure and making sure they understand what is written will help you avoid the risk of your deal falling apart at inspections. And setting the expectation, right? Inspections are also about expectation. Setting the expectation with your buyer of what's going to happen at the inspection, that it's only for significant issues that weren't previously disclosed. You know, when I'm writing an offer right now, because it's such a seller's market, if I am asking, and I did this a little bit before to this crazy market, when I write an offer, when I submit an offer, I sell the offer to the listing agent verbally and in writing. And part of that is I let them know that I've consulted my buyer, and I use their names to make it personal. I've consulted my buyer on the inspection process. They are very well aware and understanding of the fact that inspections are for significant issues that haven't been disclosed. We will not be nitpicking you on honeydew items. I let them know that up front so that they can, I'm starting to set the expectations of what that other agent can expect from me when we go under contract and they're going to be working with me. But then you actually really have to do that consultation. You know, that's the important part. Where else is the deal at risk of falling apart? Well, after appraisal, for sure, appraisals can right now be a huge issue because people are offering so far. We might be pricing properties way too high. And how do we know that? By doing our jobs and comping them out. So when you're writing an offer on a property, good Lord, I hope you've run comps on that so that you know what you could potentially be getting into. Because guess what? The appraisers use the same comps that we do. They look, you know, appraisals should be based off of closed comparable homes. But we have buyers right now that are willing to pay more, right? So if your house is, hi, Brian.
Just a quick question. I have a really big ranch in Richmond, Maine, that we're possibly going to list. And for comps, I went over it with my broker and there's no comps for it. So as far as a listing price, what would your advice be on figuring out what to list it for when there's really no comparables?
That's a great question. And you will run into that from time to time. And I have had that happen to me before. And I've used towns that are close by or similar towns close by and run those comps. And then you have to sell that. So when you're comping that out, when you do meet with the appraiser, they're going to run into the same problem, the same challenge. So that's where communication is super important. So when you do go under contract and you get to the appraisal process, let them know where you pulled your comps from. You could even give them your comps.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Somebody says, how about getting it appraised ahead of time? That's a great thought, Janice. The issue with that is that I think that the appraisal process is one of the worst parts of the transaction because it can be so subjective. And not every appraiser is going to appraise it for the same dollar amount. So if you're having a hard time comping it out, you could get an appraiser in there. And that would be a remedy for figuring out the list price. But if it's too, if you have comps, then I would just go with your gut on the comps. If you don't have comps, then getting the appraisal is a good idea ahead of time. And you can contact most appraisers will do that, and the seller just pays them directly.
Susan, I apologize. This is Erin. I've been in and out of my attic because my air conditioner decided to go today, and I have a contractor here. So you may have already covered this. If a buyer waives the appraisal inspection, and the appraisal comes in because everyone's just throwing money at deals now in the Boston area. So if the appraisal comes in $100,000 lower than what they're paying, how does that work? Does their bank make them make up that difference? Or do they just still need to have a 20% overall?
Well, we're really in that market right now, right?
Yeah.
That happen a lot. And so this is where you really have to make sure that your purchase and sales agreements are clear. And if I have a house listed and I have an offer come in that's way over the listing price, then I need to find out what that buyer's intent is when the appraisal comes in different. And I find out if they have the cash to back that up, because they could get denied financing, right? So that if you have a financing contingency, then they could get out possibly for that. But now we're going into state rules, so it depends on your state. But just for an appraisal gap, we are seeing appraisal gap clauses being written into the contract. So for example, I have a home that is listed. The offer that we accepted is well over asking price. And I've had to find out how, if the appraisal comes in lower than the purchase price, how much will that buyer come to the table with cash? So it's specifically written into this particular contract that we have an appraisal gap, that the buyer is willing to come to the table with up to $26,000 cash to cover an appraisal gap. So if there is a chance and you run the comps and you know that the offer that you receive very likely is not going to be passing appraisal, then you've got to find out if they have the money to back it up. Don't wait, because, you know, you put the listing, you list the house at a certain price, and a lot of sellers are like, wow, that's so much more right now than I ever thought I would get for this house. I'm so psyched with that listing price.
Right.
Then you get the offer and it's over. And as soon as, if the appraisal comes back at the listing price, they're like, well, I already had my heart set on that $50,000 over. And they're disappointed in the price. So the clear expectations is your key there.
Mm-hmm. And what if they waive the appraisal?
You can't, the buyer doesn't have if they're financing, it's not the buyer's choice to waive an appraisal. The lender,
right, but does that mean that they would have to come up with that full difference? So if they did 100,000 over at asking price and he comes in at asking price, would they have to come up with that full 100,000?
That it depends on how your contract is written up and how much money they have. No,
what I mean is the bank going to tell them that?
The bank won't care if they have an extra $100,000 of cash that they can throw at that. The bank will generally allow them to do that, from my experience. The thing is we have to source all this money. So you're going to want to make sure that all the money has been sourced. The bank is mostly going to care about their piece of it and what they're lending on.
Okay.
So in my experience, the lender doesn't care if they come to the table with extra cash. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, are they trying to just make sure that it's an 80-20 type of situation where maybe the loan is 80% and they're coming up with the other 20, or are they going to ask them to actually cover that gap?
They're only, for the loan piece of it, they're financing 20% of the loan. So if they're financing, they're only financing a certain part of that transaction at that point. So that's a lending question. So you're going to want to get clear with your lender on how much they're coming to the table with in cash.
Okay.
And the lender will walk you through that.
I have a question. As an agent, how do you educate your buyer/seller on the desktop appraisal? Because oftentimes these days they do a desktop, especially in hot neighborhood. And, sometimes the seller or the buyers are not happy with the outcome.
I do not like desktop appraisals, and I write that in, that the lender will not order a desktop appraisal. The lender can order a desktop appraisal, but a seller, if I have the seller, I have written into contracts in the market that we're in now, that the lender will not order a desktop appraisal.
So is this something that the buyer can ask the lender, that they need somebody to come out and do it?
The lender, when they order the appraisal, they can order a desktop appraisal. That's how you get a desktop appraisal. It's not that the appraiser decided that they wanted to do a desktop appraisal. it's a parameter that your lender can put in when they order appraisal.
Yeah, I got that. But what I'm trying to say is like, you know, can a buyer ask their lender that I don't need this desktop appraisal. I need somebody to come out and do a real appraisal face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to ask them ahead of time though. So when I have the seller, I will sometimes write in that the appraisal will be ordered as an in-person appraisal. So it can be asked. And yes, the buyer can communicate to their lender.
Because I heard about a recent situation where the buyer requested that, but they said like, there's no need for someone to come out, especially because of COVID. And they end up getting desktop appraisal.
Then that's how it would have been ordered. So you can wait for another appraiser to pick it up that is willing to do an in-person appraisal in that scenario. I ask for anything that I can that I feel is pertinent to my client's side of the transaction.
Right. Because I mean, like, I'm sorry, because I feel like, you know, to your point is like desktop appraisal, it's not fair or never be fair.
Yeah, some people have differing opinions on them. I've had them go sideways, so I request not to have a desktop. I ensure that we have an in-person one. That's my best practice. I like in-person appraisals. So that can be an issue, and appraisals too. You know, you're building relationships. It's a deal can be at risk of not passing an appraisal if you price it incorrectly. If you accept an offer that is so far over the list price and you haven't verified how they're going to pay for that, you haven't had that open and honest conversation with the buyer's agent to find out who's going to cover the gap, because they could be just offering a ridiculous amount over asking just to secure the deal. And if you haven't prepared how that's going to get paid for when the appraisal comes in low and had that conversation, then you could have the deal fall apart because of that. And now you got to go back on the market. Nobody wants that. So really knowing where your comps are and then getting through that appraisal piece right now. And if something's over asking, you've got to be very direct. When it comes to money, we have to be super clear and super direct. And you know, lender approval process, that talk about a place where a deal can go sideways or you could be at risk of a deal falling apart is financing. So much is wrapped up in the financing. So finding out where you're, you know, having open and honest conversations with your buyer, if you have the buyer, on where they're at with their financing will help you reduce the risk of a deal falling apart. Having actual approvals and not just qualifications. In this market, our buyers should be submitting all documentation to their lender prior to even going shopping, so that when you get a pre-approval letter that you submit with an offer, you now have the ability to sell because you have to, this is a sales job. You have to be able to sell your buyer to that seller. And when you let them know, we've gone through underwriting already. At the point of making an offer, we are really solid. My buyer's already passed in all their docs. It's already gone through underwriting. They already have an approval for this purchase price. You're giving reassurance and less risk to the seller of a deal falling apart. And you need everything you can right now to sell your buyers. I mean, it's just so crazy.
I love that you stressed emphatically this is a sales job, right? There are a lot of real estate agents that love to push back, like, no, I'm a realtor, and I use my best mass hole there for you. Like, and I appreciate that. That is our industry. That is your vertical. If you want to go that far, like, yes, we sell real estate. We are selling real estate, right? At some point, as Susan has stressed, there's points during the conversation where we have to help them decide what's right for them. And that sentence is a polite way of saying sell. They're never going to do it if they don't want to. We have to just help them get to their natural, logical next step. If you are not doing lead generation, you have nothing to sell. So everyone on this screen is a lead generation professional that then, once given the opportunity, has earned the right to sell real estate. So
it's a sales job. No.
You have to be comfortable with that. Well, I don't like the way that sounds. Well, okay. Go make donuts. We're all hungry. I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? But it like brass tacks, we are selling real estate and we're helping people decide what their next step is. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Somebody was asking in the chat, how much does an appraisal typically cost? You know, I used to say $500, but they've gone up. I've seen a single family home and it depends on the lender. I've had a single family home be $700, which is a lot in my market. If it's a multifamily, it's always going to be more because it's per unit. So I try not to give solid numbers, give ranges. So right now I say anywhere from $500 to $800 for a single family home. And is that a big range? Absolutely. But if you work with the lender that I always work with, I know her prices, so I can go off of that. But if you have a buyer that is just, you know, refusing to do that and they're using a more national lender, it could be, and that was my scenario for the 700. It was $700. That's a lot of money for an appraisal, but that is what they are sometimes. So you can ask the lender that your buyer is working with how much the appraisal is going to be. Okay. So for the lending process, that's why we really want the docs to get in. We want them to be approved. We really need to hold the buyer's hands through the transaction here. We need to be reminding them and be a partner with the lender that your buyers are not taking out lines of credit. I like to remind them, you know, keep your credit the way that it is. Don't pay anything off. Don't add anything new. Be sleepy with your credit. Don't open a new line of credit is the biggest one. If I have the seller and I know that the buyer is really tight, I'm having that conversation with the buyer's agent, right? Are we reminding, did you remind your buyer that we can't be buying any cars, and then make a joke of it so that they're not feeling like you're telling them how to do their job? Handle that piece with a sense of humor. But when you have a strong, good co-broke relationship, when you have to do things like remind them to do their job, like tell their person not to open a line of credit, it's received the right way. If you're contentious the whole time and then you have to have that conversation, it's not going to be received the right way.
Yeah, I mean, and you can just, you know, even if you're doing some creative writing in the driveway, you can just say, hey, listen, the only reason I bring this up, Susan, is I had a client like yours that was very excited about the 3-car garage and they couldn't wait to fill the 3rd bay. I'm just ensuring everyone in the conversation that he's not out buying an F750 right now. Like, you know, yeah. Or the 3rd bay is big enough to hold a boat. Where is Ted right now? Does anyone know? Like that? We just want to make sure, because they don't think that. And I know we saw this in the last 12 months, the employment verification window went right up until the buzzer. They were verifying employment at the 11th hour.
And so multiple times.
So like, oh, thank God Brad Kelly approved me. Now I can quit, stupid Dunder Mifflin. And like 10 minutes later, they're calling. They're like, does Tim still sell stock white at Dunder Mifflin? They're like, no, he quit as soon as you approved him for his house.
Yeah.
Like the humans don't forget, they're getting most of their education on HGTV. We have to bring it back into real world tactics and conversations on a regular basis.
Job changes is one of those. It baffles me that somebody would think that they should leave their job during a transaction, but they do. You know, this is not their world; it's our world. So yeah,
and we definitely can't leave our job during the transaction. That would be problematic. Yeah. Where's my lender? Where's my lender? He quit. The realtor quit. The cleaning company quit.
I lost my job a month after buying my house. I was never so thankful it didn't happen 3 weeks earlier.
Oh, right. Seriously. I did have a lady lose her job 3 days before closing. And you know how she found out? The lender told her because she was on vacation. She verified her employment and they were like, oh yeah, she's not back from vacation, so she doesn't know it yet, but we fired her. And that's
heartless.
Oh my God.
It was really just extra vacation. They were being very giving. Yeah. I'm going to call it a sabbatical, Cindy. Enjoy your 6 months.
So never count the money. Don't count your commission until you have the check in hand. That is actually important. Don't spend the money before you have the check in hand. Oh my gosh. Yeah, lots of things to keep together here, but you know, you can keep things together when you communicate really well with all of the parties involved and have strong relationships. It's just, I'm such an advocate for that. Oh, your co-broke relationship. And I could go on and on and on about this, so I'll try to contain myself on how important this is. Why is your relationship with your co-broker important, and where could the deal be at risk if you don't work with your co-broker? It's important for a lot of reasons that I've already covered. You know, we owe it to our clients to get along with the co-broke. Does that mean you have to like your co-broke? No. Does that mean your co-broke has to do an awesome job on their side of the transaction? No. But you must have a good relationship with them regardless, because we've talked about how we coach our co-brokes. We coach them. We speak to them in the way that we want them to speak to their client. They don't know that we're doing that, but we need to be intentional about that. So part of scripting and script practice can be, how do I speak to a co-broke about an inspection issue? How we speak to them will help us resolve issues are going to come up in contract to close. Sometimes how you handle a problem will get you more business, even though there was a problem, because you handled it well. That you take charge, that you are in control. And as soon as you have any whisper of that there could be a potential risk to the transaction, you must communicate and jump on that right away. Don't wait. Don't even wait a day, because so many other things could happen. You could make a potentially big problem a lot smaller by handling it right away. And you got to let your buyer or your seller know what's happening. So if there is a potential problem, we need to be warning them so that we're not dumping it on them at the last minute. We don't have emotion. This is business. Okay, this is business for us. It's personal for our clients. But your emotion when you communicate to your co-broke will get passed on to their client. And the thing about buyers and sellers is they will walk away from a transaction out of principle. And I have seen it happen before. It's not always about the money. Sometimes when a buyer or seller feels like the other side is being a jerk or trying to take advantage of them, they will walk away out of principle. They'll walk away from money out of principle. So it's our job to keep emotions in line and not pass those emotions on to the co-broke, who will then pass it on to their client, who might walk away out of principle. So our emotions when we're working with our co-broke is very important. We want to create a win-win scenario. So we want them to know, we want our co-brokes to understand that we want to create a win-win scenario. We want this to be a good experience for the other side as well. These are people's lives that we're talking about. We need to be understanding and compassionate about the fact that sellers have a lot on their plate with trying to get out of a house. So if we have the buyer and our buyer's like wanting 25 times to go in and measure rooms, we have to set expectations that that's not going to happen. The seller still lives there. We need to be understanding and compassionate. If a co-broke can't make an appointment at the property, we can do that for them. You know, I have had, sometimes there's a scenario where maybe I'm showing a property, it's my listing, and their buyer needs to see it and they have a wedding to go to, or they have a sick kid. Can I show that to their buyer? Yeah, because guess what? My job is to sell the house. Whether you're there or not, I can talk to your buyer and I can talk to them and be professional and not say things to them that I shouldn't say. So I'm understanding with co-brokes in that aspect too, because we all have lives. Our reputation lives on past the transaction. So our co-broke relationship is important because our reputation lives on. You never know who's going to say your name and in what context and in who else is going to be listening. So give them good things to say about you. You can deliver negative information or challenging information in a professional way. And sometimes deals fall apart, but we're not emotional about them. We handle them professionally so that we still maintain our reputation in the marketplace. And that's where that script, your client has their perspective and they're right. My client has their perspective and they're right. Where are we going to come together? And if it doesn't come together, we walk away professionally. Let's come up with a solution that both can live with. You know, things don't work out well when one side has to do all the winning and the other side does all the losing. That's not a win-win there. So we need to work with our clients on that. We say, sometimes we have to say, we need to give that buyer a win right now. They need a win. And what can that win be that won't be such a hardship on the seller? Tone. We don't yell. This is business. It's not personal. Never write something that can hurt your client or yourself. So if your communication in your relationship, whether it's in person, verbal, text, or in writing, don't put something bad in writing. It will come back in a not so great way. You don't want your broker to get handed something that you wrote from the other side of the transaction and have them call you. I mean, you have to be really mindful about what you're writing to your co-broke as well. And that you're passing on the right sentiment. Co-broke relationships, I'm very passionate about them because I think that they're so important. They will help your future deals as well. Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts around that or anything to share?
Just to be clear what Susan said, Nathan Dickey, you all know is our regional director. He's our OP here. We're blessed to have him. And he will dope slap you if you text or email something that should have been said over the phone. And the best way, to Susan's point too, the best way to de-escalate a conversation, right? I think Hergenrother said this, and Gary probably said it once. You can bring two things to a fire, and one is best, right? You can bring gasoline or water. Right? You can calm or cool the situation. We need to walk into real estate conversations with our clients and with our co-brokes. And when you walk into a room or walk into that conversation, you get to be one of two things. Do you want to be the thermostat or the thermometer? We do not adjust to the temperature of the room. We adjust to the temperature of the room, right? So if you're bringing in that cool conversation and you have something to say that needs to be said, and we'll probably bring somebody down if it's said to them as opposed to read out of context, pick up the phone. And then I think to Susan's point too, then confirm the great conversation you just had because you're an adult by way of email. Susan, I'm glad I caught you. I'm glad we got back on the same page. So to confirm, we're closing at 12 on Thursday, like all the things, right? So then you have written confirmation of what you're agreeing upon, but you're not casting blame back and forth via email. Because when that gets ripped and walked over to a broker and then, you know, Nathan Dickey gets a phone call, because Susan was fighting in the street with another broker. Like he's going to have Susan's back, but the worst conversation is going to be the last one between Susan and Nathan, right? Yeah. Nobody wants to be on Dickey's carpet. Trust me. Yeah. Not a great place to start your weekend.
No. Yeah.
So just pick up the phone, have the conversation.
Thank you. May I have a question?
Sure.
Hi, how are you? So I'm not familiar with a co-broker. Who is a co-broker? Lawyer or?
The other agent.
I see.
Agent. Yeah.
And not the Kelly Williams, another agent.
Yeah. So if you represent the buyer, it's the agent that represents the seller.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. No problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. And, you know, you also want to have a great relationship with your co-broke because your clients like seeing you be the most professional person. And even if you're the other agent is being snarky or not doing their job, you don't bash that agent to your client either. We don't do that. It makes you look bad. It makes you look unprofessional. Give them grace. We never know what's going on in somebody else's life. could be a moment in time for them that is very challenging. They might have issues happening in their personal life that's impacting them. Give them the grace to get through that, and you worry about your side. You know, sometimes we call it the 60-second funeral. There are times when a co-broke is going to do something that just annoys you, and you're like, what? We don't spend energy complaining all day about it, but sometimes you do want to. So in our office, we call it the 60-second funeral. You have 60 seconds to complain about that, then move on. Then I don't want to hear about it again, because it doesn't do anything for you, and it doesn't do anything for everybody else in the office to be negative. And then remind yourself that they're people too. Let them be how they're going to be. You be how you're going to be. And it will serve everybody better.
And we've all been the person that somebody's venting about.
Yeah.
We've all caused somebody to vent. So we need to, be understanding of that as well. Go ahead.
And if you make a mistake, if you're the person that's going to cause somebody else to need a 60-second funeral, then pick up the phone and apologize. The script for that is, I'm sorry. That's it. And sometimes we do things. You miss an appointment, call and say you're sorry. It's going to happen once in a while. If you do enough business, something is going to happen that you don't handle the right way. You got to make good on that. And that will go a long way too in your future relationship with that person. This is there are a lot of agents out there, but it's a very small world. We run into the same people frequently.
I was just going to say that if you're going to be a hitter in your marketplace, you're going to run into the top 20% all the time. Yeah. 20% of you are doing 80% of the business. So whether you love, that the Patriots don't love the Jets, they're necessary twice a year, right? We have to be on the field to play with them. So we're going to go out and just and give it our best and act professionally. And to Susan's earlier point, please don't forget this. Nathan talks about this all the time. When Susan and John Kenyon are like, oh my God, another deal with Lindsay. He's such a jackalope, and then, or I do something and you want to make yourself look good, because everybody wants two things in life, want to look good and be right. To edify yourself in front of your client, you're like, yeah, we've worked with them before. It's a little bit of and you roll your eyes. At some point during the transaction, mark Nathan's words, you're going to march back into your client with your hat in your hands, asking for grace from me. And they're going to be like, well, but yeah, you guys told us last week he's two halves of a whole moron. Why should we trust you now? Why should we give him grace now? So we that fourth wall, we can never tear that down. We've got to stay in between. Our job as agents is to stand in between our clients and extract emotion and insert professionalism. So no matter what your past feelings are, because maybe this is the deal they change. Maybe this is going to be the deal where they're going to be amazing. So we have to not even bring in their history to this transaction. We're going in with eyes wide open. They could be great this time. And if they're not, to Susan's point, you still have to be great, because you might be the only thing that gets all parties to the closing table.
Yep.
But please don't tear down the other agent, because you're going to have to go back at some point and be like, so Tim's going back to talk to his buyers. You're like, oh, that's, now your clients are like, well, that's not going to go well. You told us 3 weeks ago he's an idiot. Like, you can't, I shouldn't say can't, you can do whatever you want. We're asking you to remain professional and don't share historical evidence from other deals with your clients. Right.
And so is it making the contract to close as positive of an experience if you're relaying negative information about anything else in about the other co-broke to your client? No, you're adding a fly to the dessert. We want them, when they talk to their friends about working with us, to say they had a great experience. We don't want them to say, Susan was great, but contract to close sucked. We don't want that. We want them to say the experience was great. They handled everything.
Susan's upcoming book, Chocolate Mosquitoes, will be on store shelves at the end of the summer. Somebody just jumped in there like, fly on the dessert? What are you talking about? Yeah. We use a lot of weird analogies up here at 463. You're welcome.
Fly in the dessert. We don't want to be that. And this is why, so that we can get repeat business and referrals. Okay. We want repeat business and referrals. Why do we want? Because it makes lead generation easier, right? Repeat business and referrals. It's so rewarding to get repeat business and referrals. So how do we do that? We wow our clients. You have tools for doing that. You have the KW app. Being the source of the source, creating vendor lists and utility lists. The objective is anytime somebody has a home property related question, I want them to think of us. I need a painter. I need an electrician. I need this. I need a landscaper. I'm going to call Susan. She always has somebody. If it has anything to do with real estate, not just whether they want to buy or sell, anything at all, I want them to be thinking of me, because then when it is they have a need to buy or sell, they're going to definitely think of me. But have those resources be the source of the source during the transaction and outside of the transaction. And how can we do that? We can do that by letting them, we're letting people know, even on social media, that we have sources, by plugging people, by answering, like someone, people will post, gosh, looking for a landscaper. Be the first person to respond to that question. And folks, if you're somebody that's like, I don't really like social media, I don't really like going on Facebook, get over it and get on social media. You must be in front of people. They need to see you everywhere, because you're creating the personification that you're everywhere. Oh, I see you everywhere. Really? Because I only have 3 listing signs out right now, but they see you everywhere because they see you on Instagram, they see you on Facebook, they see your signs, they see you interacting in the community. Be on social media, be on Facebook and add value. Be positive. Positive posts only, no complaining. Do not bash anybody, whether it's another agent or just another person. As realtors, we lose the right to use Facebook the way everybody else does. And if you don't like that, I don't care. You just have lost the right to use Facebook for anything that is remotely sounding like a complaint. We just don't have that right. Would I like that right? There's lots of things I'd like to say on Facebook. I choose not to, because my business depends on that. We cannot give people a reason to disagree with us because they will not want to do business. They might be like, yeah, I really like Susan, but she doesn't support the school system. That's a reason for them to call my competitor. I need to give them reasons to
your
call
competitors
me.
On the board. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel really strongly about that, in case you couldn't tell. And I feel it's important for me to be direct with you on that, because I do see a lot of negativity on social media, and I see it from some of my fellow agents in the marketplace, and I cringe for them when I see it. So it can be a fantastic tool if you're using it correctly. Be consistent. Not only on, don't only just like repost something. You got to be interactive on Facebook. You have to be reminding people that you're in the business, because what's really horrible is when you go on Facebook and find out that one of your friends sold with somebody else. That's our fault, because we haven't been reminding them that we're in the business. So that's a really fantastic tool for you to be reaching out and touching people and reminding them in a way that you're adding value.
Right. Michael Jordan, after he finished playing basketball, was asked why he never got political, which is sort of ironic because Kyrie's coming to the Garden Friday. Anyway. So Chuck loved that. So Michael was asked why he never got political. And he said, well, I'm selling sneakers. He goes, I'm concerned about green. I don't care if you're red or blue. Right. And here's the thing. If you do enough lead generation, you can decide if you want to sell to the elephant or the donkey. Like, that's up to you. If you have enough options, you get to pick your kitchen tables. At the same time, why would you exclude anybody from the conversation? Why would you let politics get in the way? And that's sort of what Susan was saying. The other side of it too, and I know, Susan, this is really what you meant, but I wanted to bring up the political thing, because I think we have to be, just a source of positivity while we're online, right? So use it for a force for good. And if you're listening to us right now and you're on your back 9 and you're like, some of my friends had MySpace and now they're not here anymore. If you're never going to delve deep into social media and you're starting to wrap things up and you're looking for somebody to take your book of business, then do what you're going to do. If you are jumping in and you think that you're going to be a player in this industry for years to come, we know that 90% of buyers and sellers start their search online, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean that's where it ends. It doesn't mean that's the influence that drives you to their kitchen table or them to your conference table. We just know that a lot of people start their search from the quiet of their couch on an iPad. That being said, the other half of what Susan was saying, and this is really important, think about this. If I'm constantly posting, just went and got my Starbucks, it was too hot, this traffic sucks, I don't like my face, why is it raining? Then you expect me to take on the largest financial transaction of your life? I can't solve the weather. I can't solve my face. My car stinks. My coffee's too hot. I am a bucket of complaints with a side of fries. But I'm going to help you nail that $1.9 million house, Susan. No, I'm not. Maybe I am, but I'm not presenting that way in public, right? So we don't get, and this is really what Susan was driving at, I think, we don't get to be two people. You don't get to be Mr. First Date, right? Be you, be authentic, but don't try to be somebody you're not online and then erode into the guy she's going to break up with or not ask out or not answer your call again. Oh, well, my private page is fine. I can be political there. I can be a jackass there. You can't. They'll find it. I can give my wife somebody's picture in black and white. She will have their DNA samples for me in 20 seconds. Yep. You should work for the FBI, right? Your sellers, your buyers will find every piece of you online, as they should. So present professionally. Don't have a Jekyll and Hyde with the ones and zeros. Please don't. Dead with love. Right. Hi, Nate. I love you too.
Yeah.
But he wants us to talk to you guys this way. We have to warn you. Please be professionals.
Yeah, you got to be professional. You got to come from a place of contribution. You have to be positive on social media and get the conversation going, get interactive on other people's pages. Get your folks to write reviews on your Facebook page. We love that, and mix it up, don't be all realtor all of the time, because then people will shut you off. They don't care that it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house again that you're listing, but they do want to see the post of you at the closing table with somebody. You can mix up how you're introducing real estate into your personal pages. And I definitely get more engagement from my personal page than my business page. So I mix up what I'm offering on Facebook to be some real estate and some personal. People love to see what you do in your personal life, but keep it clean. They don't want to see you drunk on a Facebook post. They just don't. Doesn't mean that they can't see you with a drink in your hand, but understand when to draw the line. And that's all I've got on Facebook, because it is a great tool. So, don't miss out in your business because you haven't been on it. Just start today with something small. And if it's not a habit for you, then put it in your calendar to go in and do it. Another really great tool for repeat business and referrals are handwritten notes. I send out so many cards. I send out birthday cards. Every time I have a closing, I get my clients' birthdays and I send them a birthday card with scratch tickets until they die. Forever. I have spreadsheets and they're in my database, and I have reminders. I send out home anniversary cards. If they buy a house, they get an home anniversary card from me every year. If you give me a referral, I thank you a latte and I send you a card with a gift card in it. I do. You got to gift people. Gifts work. You got to pay for stuff sometimes.
And now that they have matcha green tea lattes, you can be thank you very matcha green tea. I don't know. It tailed off at the end. It sounded better in my head. But anyway, yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
You can't cards and that's another reason I'm on Facebook. If somebody in my life, even if I'm not super close to them, has maybe a loved one pass away, I send a sympathy card. Has a baby, I send them a new baby card. You have something in their life that they want to celebrate, reach out to them with a handwritten card. People love that stuff. And it comes back to you. And I do this authentically. I do it because it is part of my nature that works for me. Not just to be cold calculating to get everybody's business. This is just a way for me to reach out to them that isn't always, hey, you looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? You know, you're reaching out to people to constantly be trickling how much you care and reminding them that you're here. And sometimes I do put my business card in those. If it's a birthday card and I haven't been able to connect with that person, I'll stick my business card with the scratch ticket. Not in a sympathy card, please. I have heard of an agent doing that. Don't send a sympathy card with your business card in it. That is just the tackiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, they're gonna sell the house. I'm just kidding. No, I was literally gonna lift the phone to my face and joke with you and just be like, you know, congratulations on the new baby. So you're gonna need a nursery now, aren't you? Need another room? Like, yeah, we've got to walk that tightrope of, so sorry to hear about your father passing. Who's handling the estate? Like, you can't do that. It is not a 1-2 punch.
No.
Right. The consistency of John and Susan showing up in people's lives for all of their life events. That's the point. They're not just showing up in the transactional moments, because as the great Jason Abrams will tell you, tell me with your friends, the average American moves every 5 to 7 years. Can you tell me when your friend is going to move? If you could, you wouldn't be here. You'd be counting your money because you would have won Powerball in Pennsylvania because you would have known the state it was going to go off in, right? So in the grand scheme of things, it's about just consistently showing up. So when they become transactional, they're like, you know what, for no other reason than the fact that Susan and John were always there and they're part of our community and they've helped everyone, we're going to call them when the time is right. That's the video game of what we're doing.
Here's a true story that I'll share with you. You can go after orphan clients. I do stay away from doing that to my fellow KW agents. I had a listing and it was a big listing. It was a over $2 million listing and we sold it. And for that orphan client, I got her birthday at the closing too. I had no way to get in touch with her because I obviously didn't have her phone number or her email address. You know, I sent that lady a freaking birthday card every year and a Christmas card. And when she sold, she called me. I didn't hear from her for 2.5 years, and I just consistently sent out 3 cards a year to her. And she called me. So sometimes these things really do work. You can send a home anniversary card to an orphan client because you know their address and you know when they bought it, right? So gifts and cards and being personal, what do you mean by an orphan client? So if I represent the seller, the buyer is represented by another buyer agent, that's an orphaned client. They weren't my client, but we call them orphaned clients because, you know, in this business, the majority of agents don't stay in touch with their clients after they close. It's just fact. They don't. Some of them don't even remember who they closed with. So part of repeat business is staying in touch with people when you close a deal with them. You got to stay in communication with them. You got to use your database to remind you to stay in touch with them. So ways that you can stay in touch with them are the handwritten notes, the cards, the calls, the friending them on Facebook. Repeat business comes from staying in touch with people that you've transacted with. But you've got to stay in touch with them by adding value, being kind, being someone that they want to reach out to. And another way to give them a gift at closing. When you close a transaction, it's one of the only industries where the people that are doing the work buy the gift. In other industries, the other person buys the gift for the person that did all the work. We're not in that business. Once in a while, I will get a closing gift, but we're not in that business. We get gift. It will come back to you. It will come back to you. People expect gifts. And even if they don't expect it, they're happy to get it. We had a property listed And when they bought it, they had a different agent. And while I was working with them, I asked them why they didn't call their previous agent. And he said, because she didn't get me a gift at closing. That was the reason. I knew they still communicated because we're all friends on Facebook. So I said, hey, Eric, why didn't you use so-and-so again? She didn't get me a gift at closing. So gifts work. Buy the gift. Is there a dollar? Most agents do not continue to follow up. It's true. Is there a dollar limit on giving a gift like $100? So I'm not going to get into what you can write off and what you can't write off. I'm going to be the realtor in the room and say that you need to contact an accountant for that. But I will tell you, even if you have to spend more money than what you can write off, spend the money anyway. So I personally, I gift for a referral. If somebody gives me a referral, whether it's an agent or whether it is a non-agent, I send a thank you card with a $25 gift card in it to something. I try to find, I have a stack like this of gift cards at my desk because I try to send a gift card that I think will be something that they would want to receive. So if I am friends with that person on Facebook and I see that maybe they golf, they go to the movies, they go to Starbucks, Amazon is always welcome. So I try to, restaurants, if they're like live in Dover or they live somewhere that has a great restaurant life, maybe it's a restaurant, I give a $25 gift card for a referral. Regardless of the size of the referral, if they give me someone gives me a referral and maybe they give me a buyer referral and the buyer isn't even qualified, they don't qualify to purchase anything, I still send the gift card and the thank you. I want them to send me, because the next one they send me could be a $500,000 buyer. I don't know. I thank them for thinking of me when they came across somebody that needed to transact in real estate. I also send another one when they close. I send a $100 gift card to that person. That's just me personally. You do what works for your business. But if someone does refer you, I also follow up with them like, hey, thank you, Erin, so much for referring Tim over to me. We're going out shopping this weekend and we're really looking forward to looking around in the Lakes region. I think you are thinking of a non-licensed referral gift. Anybody, whether it's a referral from an agent or just a friend.
Yeah. Susan, someone put in the comment, I think there was a question of this on the test. So I think what they're referring to is the rule around us paying for a referral as an agent to a non-licensed person. So I think you might be confusing what Susan's talking about. So, in terms of, we can thank our friends and family and people in business for giving us a referral. But in terms of like a referral fee, we can't give there. I think it's $200, right? There is a limit on that. Maybe it's state specific. I'm not sure, but we can't pay anybody for the referral as like a payment. We can give a gift to whoever we want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So if it's an agent and they're giving you a referral and they're licensed in another state or even in this state, you work with your brokerage and they can get a referral fee.
Right.
For referring that over to you. In addition to that, I just send a thank you gift. I just thank them for appreciating me. I have a property manager that is also, he's a broker. He doesn't do real estate transactions. He manages condo associations. That's what he does. He gives me all of his referrals and I give him a 25% check every time. Yeah. And I give him a card because I'm appreciative of the fact that he thinks of me and he knows I'm going to do a great job for whoever he refers, right? So that's important, that when someone refers someone to you, you treat that referral with the utmost respect and you give them great service, even if they're not ready to transact, because you want to encourage whatever that referral source was to continue to do that. So gifts work. Gifts work. And okay, we're getting close, so I'm going to keep going. Command transaction management. So there are custom guides within Command. I'm not going to open up Command and go through that piece of it. But checklists work. You really, for a contract to close perspective, you really need to have checklists. Just like your database, when you think you're going to remember to call someone and then you get busy and then you don't remember to call them, there's parts of contract to close that you think you're going to remember to do, like make sure the final water reading was done or whatever. Make your list. Work with your brokerage, whatever your market center is, wherever your market center is. There's guides in Command. There's people have checklists that they're willing to share. But start developing your checklist for contract to close, because you want to nail it. You'll get more repeat business if you have a solid process. Don't wing it. Contract to close is not the time to wing it. Okay. Okay. Customized checklist. So I'm going to pass over this because I don't have time to do Command. But there's a lot of resources in Command for checklists. If for contract to close, your opportunity has the checklist of documents. But remember, for contract to close outside of documents, there's a lot of things that you want to add into there. So you can edit and customize Command to have your own custom checklist in there. And I
just real quickly, Susan, too, if people are thinking, I don't know what Command is, welcome. If you do know what Command is and you know who your MCTT is, your Market Center Tech Trainer, please make sure you link up with them. Every Market Center either has or is getting a Market Center Tech Trainer. And if you don't have that resource regionally on Thursdays, that would be today. They have a regional Market Center, regional tech training going on every Thursday. You should see that coming from the New England region via email. So please plug into Command. Please understand how to do your opportunities. There's got to be somebody at your market center who can help with that. And I trust if you explored, if you're just landing and you don't know who your market center tech trainer is, there's probably one at your market center. Make sure you engage with that individual. Okay.
Absolutely. So we're going to move on to AHAs to achievement. And, how has your thinking changed? So this is a great place here for participation. This is, how has your thinking changed? What do you feel differently about? What was meaningful for you today? If there's anything that jumps out at you, please feel free to jump in and share.
I thought having a pre-approval done, pre-inspection done, I thought that was great. It's going to save the buyer, a few dollars or whatever. And, if you can have that presented with the property disclosure, I think it just moves along the process that much faster.
Yeah. Awesome. And it can be done. A lot of people are just afraid to have that conversation with the seller, but so practice it. It's such a great and a very effective tool.
I also think if someone's buying a home, within a half a mile of a body of water, then we should probably be letting our clients know that you might have to look into flood insurance. I ran into the situation personally, and it almost, I almost backed out of the deal because all of a sudden they sprung it on me, and it was going to be, $1,500 a year. So just mentioning that when you're, up front, if someone's near water, a body of water, I think is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else have an aha?
I thought when we were talking about the social media aspect and Timothy brought up politics and how you really shouldn't get involved with that. I really felt that I enjoyed that because I think you should stay away from anything that divides people on social media, because then you're losing that other half of business of people that might use you. So absolutely. That was super helpful. And the one thing I struggled with at first was the comments I was receiving on my posts from from some of my friends that weren't very appropriate. So I was trying to figure out how to deal with that, whether I should come back or
just hide
social
them.
media. Ben, if you
just hide them. Yeah, hide them or delete them. Just take the comments off. Don't engage.
You can set comments on approval status too. You have to approve the comments.
Yeah, don't engage. I know when I first started. Don't
engage.
Honestly, so this is gonna sound crazy,
amen.
but
Amen.
When I first started and I listed, like, I was listing a few houses, and family friend, gotta love them, posted.
I put rude comments on all our stuff always.
Are you working with all drug dealers? Because who else could afford these houses? Okay. No joke. Not even lying. That's what he put on my, and I was like, Derek, but so
funny you should ask, Derek. I just did my numbers, and only 17% of my past clients are drug
I've known
dealers.
him since
Who
I
do you
was
know
like,
that sells drugs that would like to buy?
Like,
a huge
I've known
house,
him since I was
right?
8 years
Gotta
old.
turn it into a script.
He thought he was being funny. I deleted his post. I called his mom, and I was like, Auntie, like, you call him and tell him to stop it. He's not being funny. I texted him, so like, don't do it on Facebook is what I'm saying. Like, if your friends are being sort of like inappropriate, you can always just delete those posts, delete the comment. You can leave the post, just delete the comment, and no one can see it.
And you could say, hey, positive comments only, please.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I just deleted the comment, but
yeah.
But let me say this concerning that too. If you're a member, like if you're going to start, we always tell you guys to, what are you near that you're not in? If there's a group that's near and dear to your heart, and maybe want to keep it out of your main lane, but at the same time, obviously here you walk into any lobby here at Gary's company, it's God Family Business. So, if you're really tight with, the young progressives, the young Republicans, your Catholic Church, your faith, you should be able to celebrate that. Just know that some people might move away from you because they find out about your faith or whatever. And to me, if somebody hates me because I'm Irish Catholic, they probably already hated me. But like, that's probably not going to be the tipping point, But if you're going to rock and roll and sell all the houses to all the young Democrats or all the young Republicans, go get them, Ben. Like, I mean, just be you, play with your people like that. This is your small business. What Susan's saying is, obviously there's no need to go pick a fight in the main lane. But if you're if you're a member of these certain groups, and that is a place where that's a space that you want to play in, don't avoid that either, But what we're saying is, don't make your business page the center ring at WrestleMania of stupidity, where all of your friends are dumping their errant thoughts in, right? And it turns into this mishmash of political and religious, banter. That's what we don't want for you.
And
but I would tell you not to avoid those conversations either, because if those are your people, go serve your people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you have stuff that's polarizing or, triggering for people, and even if you posted it a while ago, go into your Facebook and your Instagram and clean that stuff up. So think about now, right? Like who I was in terms of my public, I used Facebook differently, right? Like as a business owner, we use Facebook in one way. As a community member who's going on and, going up, oh, I can't believe they're going to build a new this or that, right? Like if you took a stance on things and it fired people up, or you think, just go in and take it out. You don't need to have all of that stuff on there. Just like when you break up with your girlfriends or whatever, like, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, they dated for 5 years. She's nowhere on their Facebook.
You're a good looking kid, Ben. She was stupid.
Yeah. So take anything like that. Just take it off. You don't need it there.
I think now the climate now, to Susan's point, the climate now is, you said something, anyone disagrees. They find their gang that disagrees with you, and there's a cancel culture.
Yep.
So just be aware of that. There is no corner of the internet that is not being seen.
Yeah.
Right. And to Erin's point, you can go back to 1978 and pull down that stupid post you put up about Jimmy Carter and his peanuts. I said peanuts. The T is important there, right? If you said that, somebody that was annoyed that day probably screenshotted it. So bring that into your future self. Don't put anything. I was only up there for a second. The universe grabbed it. Right.
Right.
Just be super professional, super careful and care-filled as we talk on the internet.
People will stalk you. I mean, one of my clients now, she Googled and Facebook creeped every person that put an offer in on her house before she accepted one. Oh. They Google the agent and they Facebook creep the agent. Like people will do that for you. So show them what you want them to see on that.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that people creep on you because like every agent I talk to, or pretty much anyone I talk to about real estate, I get a friend request that night from them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it's the way it works. And honestly, it works the other way too, because, even just safety as a realtor, if you're meeting with a client that you've never met before and you don't I absolutely, anybody out there who's going to work with me, that I have checked you out on social media. I absolutely have. And I've checked you out on LinkedIn. So, I mean, it works both ways. So.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. So, this is such an important slide, which you've seen every session because it's so relevant to building your business. You do still need to move forward with, setting your goals of 10 contacts added a day, 10 conversations a day, 10 handwritten notes, and 10 home previews per week. It's important that we're getting in and seeing properties, and that we're learning about how to look at homes, so this is the environment we're in with no home inspections. We might be bringing a buyer through a home and the listing agent says you have 15 minutes and it's a $400,000 house. I mean, you have 15 minutes to get through that house with the buyer and potentially put an offer in. Oh my goodness. That is just the most ridiculous environment that we're in. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Don't waste any time in the basement. There's definitely a furnace. Just keep going through the top.
You gotta be looking at things like that could be potential pitfalls because you might be putting an offer in with no home inspection. Whew, that's a lot of responsibility that we have in being a great buyer's agent. So you got to get into homes to start learning how to look at them from the perspective of how do we protect our buyers. And it's 12:07, so we are going to just quickly talk about scripts because we do not want to be practicing on our customers and clients and contacts, so we need to script. It's the last day of Ignite. You have had a whole virtual room full of people, of potential script partners. So if you haven't gotten one, I strongly encourage you to get a script partner. It's important that we learn how to communicate with people, so that we can be a really great advocate for them. We don't want to spend our time when we're talking to contacts, customers, and clients thinking about what we might have to say, because then we're not listening to them. We script so that we already have that information in our brain. So when the topic comes up, we've already regurgitated it. We've made it our own, and we know how to add value and how to respond. And when we are working with our buyers and sellers, we don't want to use our realtor lingo and acronyms. They don't care about that. They don't understand what we're talking about. We script so that we use their language, and it builds confidence in ourselves when we script and we know what we're talking about. It's a big confidence builder, so that when you do have to get on the phone and lead generate, or you bump into somebody at the soccer field or the bar or the grocery store, we already know what to say. We're not stressed out, or when it comes out not authentic, it's because you haven't scripted it. And that's not going to build confidence for them to want to work with you. Okay. And we're not going to role play. You guys are off the hook on that. But when you are going to get into your lead generation, I do have to remind you to adhere to the do not call list. There are lots of fines around calling people on the do not call list. If you do call somebody that's on the do not call list, your script is, "I'm so sorry, I will take you off our list. I hope you have a great day." But look at the do not call list. It really is important. People are getting inundated with calls, and we don't want to be annoying them.
I have a quick question on this. Some random guy gave me a list of leads, and I assume a lot of it is do not call list stuff. I did look up the registry, and it's like $66 a zip code a year. which, you know, by the time I do Dover and Portsmouth, it's going to be like, you know, over $600. Is there like a list? I always thought it was free, like just to see who's on it. I know there's a workaround if you go into Remine on Paragon, because she said that it has like an MLS inventory, and it also shows the homeowner and their number and says if it's on the do not call list. I got to look at that again and make sure that's correct, but that's what I wrote down in my notes. Is there somewhere you go for do not call list stuff?
Erin, where is is it on the Facebook page?
So in the Facebook group, there is also a whole section on command in Connect as well. So if you type in the search bar, do not call registry, you will find a ton of resources that KWRI has pulled together for you as well. I have pulled together, I think, 5 or 6 resources. If you go on to the Keller Regional Ignite group I don't remember which guide it is, but there is a guide that's devoted to the do not call registry. And there's as much information as you can get started there. There's national information and how to get started with the do not call registry. I don't know about the paying for it. That's the first I've heard, Anthony, of having to pay for it as an individual. Brokerages can pay for it, but I think individuals, you can register and have access to up to 5 zip codes without a fee. So that's my most current information. It may have changed since I put that file together, but that's where I would start.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I appreciate people that are jumping into the expireds and looking for do not call information. I'm going to remind you of the tool that everyone has that you might be Tindering or Candy Crushing on right now. Probably has a list of names of people that you're allowed to call. And I promise you, no matter what you do, no matter what vertical you go into with real estate, that you create a niche in your family and friends, the people that you know and love and trust. And Susan's nodding already because her and John know this. Without fail, that's where your gold mine is. The people that you know and love and trust. And it's not about me calling Ben Gallagher and saying, hey, you weren't moving yesterday. You're moving today. He'll be like, no, stupid. I'm not moving today. That's not the point. I'm calling Ben to find out who he knows that I should know. I'm calling my best people to find out who their best people are. That's how we stay connected. That is going to be the absolute gasoline on the fire of your business. I'm not saying don't go expireds and FSBOs. I'm saying if you start to find yourself doing too much research to track down the do not call that you can call with the expireds, I would ask you, have you exhausted your phone? Have you talked to the people in your phone? And don't forget the ultimate metric. We have to tell everyone in our life 7 times we're in real estate before they forget. And none of you are done with that. I say that with love. Most real estate agents are not done with that conversation, because when John Kenyon calls somebody today and he gets a new name, he has 1 conversation today. There's 6 more conversations. You're always adding people to the sphere of influence that is yours. And that's the best do not call list that you won't ever have to worry about forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This slide too is on all of the Ignite sessions to create your success list. You know, I'm a checklist person. I do write my list at night for the next day, and it really can help keep you organized and focused. If you don't have a plan, then you know, your day gets away from you, and before you know it, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you haven't gotten anything done. So you got to put your big rocks here. Your big rocks are your lead generation, right? And then if there's other important things that you have to follow up, you got to write that stuff down so that you don't forget. So create your success list and have that be a habit for you. You know, you got to do that every day. And that's all that I have for you today. I'm glad and thankful that you guys all came. If you have any questions, let me have them. I'm here for another few minutes and happy to help if there's anything that I can do for you. And you can always reach out to me on Facebook. I'm very easy to find.
We want to thank Susan Kenyon for her time today. She teaches on behalf of our market center all 3 times that we did this session. If you enjoyed today's class, make sure that you thank Susan Kenyon. Tell people that you love Susan Kenyon. If you did not enjoy today's class, you can list Nathan Dickey as the instructor and say he was terrible. But we trust that you enjoyed it. Her name is Susan Kenyon. She's a rock star, and we're grateful to have her here at 463. As a reminder, if you are at your market center and you have not engaged with your productivity coach, if you have not engaged with your market center tech trainer, please find out who those individuals are. If those people are not in existence yet at your market center, please reach out to your team leader and ask, when are we getting these resources? This is an initiative that most of our region has these people. So if you haven't had a conversation with them, said with love, you might be sort of doing it wrong. Plug into the resources. These people are not magic makers. We're not handing you the red pill or the blue pill. We don't play the part of Morpheus. It's the people that are plugged in with the resources at their market center that invariably do more business. So you probably came here as a newer agent, if you are a newer agent, for the reason of the coaching and the training. And if you showed up for that reason and you're not plugging into it, I'd beg the question, what are you waiting for? So please reach out to the resources at your market center. And if you're missing resources at your market center, ask your OP, ask your team leader, when is this person getting hired? I'm getting a call now from Nathan. That's horrifying. So yeah, maybe we need a new me here. I don't know, but we'll find out. I'll call him back. Thank you, Susan, so much.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
Have a great day. Have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you so much.
All your humans. The business is in your phone already. Trust us.